Chapter 439. Corn Grass Field. The grain-variant corn grass, which originally had large handfuls of flower ears, has now borne full grains, looking like a relatively round triangle, squeezed together on a single ear. There is not much resemblance to the corn kernels in his memory, but they are as big as corn kernels. This large handful of ears weighs at least half a caddy. When it matures, it will surely yield far more than wheat and corn. He just doesn't know how it tastes. Is it similar to the taste of corn on the cob, or similar to other grains? He doesn't know if it can be eaten as rice or ground into flour. Not far from the grain-variant corn grass, List saw the oily variant corn grass. The fat stems and leaves are not very conspicuous in the ordinary corn grass, but its ears are very conspicuous. The ears of ordinary corn grass are dry and shriveled, but this ear is unusually fat, and the tender green shell seems transparent, and it can be clearly felt that it contains a lot of oil. Pinching it, sure enough, there is oil in his hand. This is an unripe ear. When it matures, he doesn't know what the oil in the fruit looks like. They are all very valuable mutations. List's evaluation of the grain and the oily variant corn grass was good, slowly diluting his desire for corn on the cob. Then he told Isaiah, this kind of corn grass with grains on its head is called grain corn, and this kind of corn grass with oil is called oil corn. Take good care of them. When they mature, we can study their usability and prepare to plant them on a large scale. Yes, my lord. After identifying grain corn and oil corn, List cast magic eyes and circled the corn field, finding no signs of magic. List returned to the castle and enjoyed a sumptuous dinner. At the end of the dinner, he went to the seaside villa to chat with Chi for a while. During this week's trip to Black Horse Island, he met with Chi twice at the seaside, mainly to let her command the mangrove sprite to help the mangrove forest at the mouth of the Red River stabilize its roots. The magic of the sprite is still very strong. Chi, who has now been promoted to a water mage, is obviously much more cheerful and lively than when she was immersed in magic. After blowing the horn, she quickly swam from the sea, her blue hair swinging, like a waterfall falling in front of her eyes. Brother, Chi fought a sea monster today. What? It's a sea monster, a big conch that can release water whirlpools. It tried to sneak attack Chi, but it couldn't defeat Chi. Conch? Sea monster? List's inspiration bloomed on the spot, but he still chose to play it safe. Are you okay? I'm fine. Chi is a water archmage. It's just a low-level sea monster, so it definitely couldn't beat Chi. Chi beat it until it hid in the crevices of the rocks. Chi said with a smile. She was quite happy that she was able to defeat a low-level sea monster. Actually, with her current strength, she could even barely fight against the guru Mitta that had already turned into organic fertilizer. Then, List began to ask about the low-level sea monster, the conch. According to Chi's description, this was a large conch the size of a washbasin, with a yellowish-white shell. It liked to walk on the rocks at the bottom of the sea, and it could release ordinary magic water whirlpools. Using this magic to catch small fish and shrimps, it turned out to be a carnivorous predator. Putting all this information together, List roughly understood that this was a conch that could produce pink pearls. He couldn't help but ask, Chi, can you catch it? Brother, do you want this big conch? Yes. Then Chi will go catch it now and give it to my elder brother. Oh, my elder brother said that human knights need the meat of magical beasts to cultivate. In that case, Chi will often look for sea monsters and catch them for my elder brother to eat. In this way, my elder brother will be able to become a sky knight sooner. What a considerate little fairy. List ruffled her blue hair with all his might. Chi, you understand me. Hee, then I'll go catch a big conch. Don't worry, go catch it tomorrow. It's already night now, the sea must be very dark. Chi can see, and Chi swims very fast. Brother, wait for Chi will be back soon. Let Nami play with brother. Achi put Nami on the table, then turned around and left the Sea View Villa to catch the low-level sea monster Big Conch. List could only shake his head helplessly, and then began to tease Nami. He took out a candy wrapped in hemp leaves, peeled it, and handed it to the little fairy. Peanut nougat, Flower Town's new product, do you know about it? Chirp. Nami tilted her head and looked at the peanut nougat. Next, she walked over to the nougat, sniffed the nougat, hugged the nougat with both hands, and took a bite. Although she was only the size of a palm, her teeth were very good. With a crunch, she bit off a small piece of nougat and chewed vigorously. Then she shouted excitedly, chirp. 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 Is it delicious? Squeak. Nami held the nougat in her arms and ate happily. List looked at the beautiful little creature with a smile and said softly, after eating and drinking, don't forget to work for me. The mangroves of Mangrove Island are growing well and no longer need the cordyceps to affect them. When the mangroves of Red Estuary grow, move the cordyceps there and develop the mangroves of Red Estuary for me. Without a contract, communication between him and Nami was hindered. Therefore, Nami could not understand what he was saying. She just hugged the nougat and ate it, and from time to time raised her head and called out to List, chirp. When the nougat was finished, List took out another one. After Nami took it, she did not eat it immediately. Instead, she wrapped the hemp leaves again, hugged the nougat, and stuffed it into the drawer of the cabinet. She then flew to List's shoulder and landed on List's shoulder. She began to comb List's hair, or it could also be called looking for lice. She flipped his hair one by one to check his scalp. List did not know if she learned this trick when she raised the mallard ducklings. Unfortunately, List washed his hair every day and there was no dirt on his head. What a docile little elf. Compared with Nami, Ella is simply a bully. He thought of Ella who liked to shout. He could not help but sigh. Just then, the sound of waves came from outside, and then he saw that Achi had swum to the bottom floor of the Sea View Villa. She tied a large conch with a water belt and carried it to the second floor. Brother, Achi has knocked out the big conch. It can no longer release the water whirlpool. Eyes shining, List took the big conch and said, well done, my Achi. Hee hee. It's getting late. You should also rest. I'll get rid of this big conch first. Okay. Holding the big conch, List quickly returned to the castle and began to dissect the big conch in the open space of the apple orchard. First, while it was unconscious, he directly pulled out the sky cutter sword, infused it with chi, and killed it. Then he picked out the conch meat. The conch was the size of a wash basin, but the meat was very small. He carefully scratched and soon found a hard object wrapped in a membrane. Chapter 440. The pink pearl, about the size of an egg, had flame-shaped lines on it after being cleaned. At first, List thought it was a pearl of fire magic, but the magic eye observed that its magic color was light blue. Like the big conch, it was of the water attribute. The black pearl was also of the water attribute, but its effect was to disperse wind magic. At the moment, he didn't know what effect the egg-sized pink pearl could have, but its magic concentration was stronger than that of the largest black pearl in List's collection. I probably won't be able to study anything, so I'll leave it to Chris to study. Now that he was supporting the mage Chris Truth, other magic-related work could be handed over to her except for making potions. Inside the magic workshop, Chris looked at the pink pearl and nodded solemnly. Viscount, this is a magical item. I need to study its effect carefully and give you the results. Sorry to trouble you. I'm at your service. List suddenly asked, Chris, are you sure about your promotion to a great mage? Chris thought for a moment and replied, I have some ideas, but I still need more preparation. If everything goes well, I will be able to become a great mage in about a year. If it doesn't go well, I may not be able to become a great mage for several years. If you need anything, just tell me. In addition, I wish you an early promotion to a great mage. At that time, I will build a mage tower for you on Black Horse Island for you to pursue the truth." Chris said with heartfelt joy, "Thank you, Viscount." Unlike Elk Sun, she really liked to study magic and truth. Having a mage tower was a great honor and benefit for her. After a brief chat, leaving the Pink Pearl, List said goodbye and left. When he returned to the castle, Mrs. Abby had cleaned up the meat of the big conch. This World of Warcraft meat naturally belonged to List. "It would be great if I could raise a low-level sea monster. Unfortunately, there is no knowledge about raising sea monsters. In order to get the Pink Pearl, I can only kill the conch to get the pearl. Fortunately, not only did I get a pink pearl, but also a large group of conch meat and a beautiful conch shell." He cleaned the conch shell and drilled a hole in the tip. He placed it in his mouth and blew on it. Immediately, a deep and resounding horn sound was emitted, spreading far and wide. The effect was even more powerful than a loudspeaker. Casting magic eyes, List could see that when the conch was blown, there was a flash of magic on the shell, indicating that this amplification effect was related to magic and could barely be regarded as a kind of magic. This should also be given to Chris and let her study it. Perhaps she can develop a horn with the same effect as a loudspeaker. With such a magic horn, it can be used as an air defense alarm. If it is blown during a crisis, I'm afraid it can even wake people up from their dreams. Even if he couldn't make a loudspeaker with a strong amplification effect. As an ornament, it could be placed on an antique shelf in the study. It was also a delightful sight. It's a pity that one big conch is too little, he thought. However, just when he felt that there was only one giant conch and that the reward wasn't too valuable, Achi brought new news. "Brother, the Black Pearl Lake has been occupied by many giant conches, and they are currently fighting against the giant clam. There are also many giant clams at the bottom of the lake to resist the invasion of the giant conches." "Giant conches and giant clams are fighting?" "Yes, big brother. You told Achi to look for a very, very large giant clam, but Achi never found one. But now, many giant clams with a diameter of more than 2 meters have appeared in the Black Pearl Lake. The biggest one is even twice as big as Achi's shell. Achi's shell was 3 meters in diameter, and giant clams larger than Achi's shell were at least 4 or 5 meters in diameter. They were indeed behemoths, and much larger than the giant clam that was fished up. It was worth looking forward to what kind of black pearls would be inside. Moreover, there were also a large number of low-level sea monster giant conches. Whether it was for the pink pearls or the conch meat, List would not give up this opportunity. "Achi, pay attention to cooperation, and together with me, we will catch the giant clams and giant conches that are causing trouble in the Black Pearl Lake." "Okay." Achi nodded excitedly. The once delicate, innocent, and caring little siren had now become a great sorcerer who liked to fight and hunt sea monsters if he didn't like it. This made List sigh with emotion. A girl changes 18 times from childhood to womanhood. The flower was immediately dispatched to the atoll. The atoll had no clear ownership, but it now belonged to List. Several black tulip flags were planted on the reef. When they arrived at the atoll, the tide had just ebbed, and large tracts of white, fine sand were exposed on the sea. The flower slowly sailed into the Black Pearl Lake. List used magic eyes to guide the flower on how to salvage the giant clams and giant conches. Achi was at the bottom of the lake, guiding the position of the bodies of the two sea monsters. Giant clams could barely be regarded as sea monsters. It was a fierce fight. As the divers continued to tie ropes and fish up more and more giant clams and conches, List became more and more excited. He had just broken open a giant clam with a diameter of about 1.8 meters and found a bowl-sized black pearl and several fist-sized black pearls inside. These were all treasures. Another large conch the size of a wash basin did not produce pink pearls. After dissecting 5 large conches in a row, no pink pearls were found. It was not until the 6th large conch, the largest one, that a new pink pearl was found. It was a pink pearl the size of a goose egg. The probability of a large conch producing a pink pearl is a bit low, while the giant clam producing a black pearl is very high, but the probability of a large black pearl is also not high. He silently estimated the pearl drop rate of the giant clams and conches. The fishing lasted for 2 hours. Chi worked hard to track the giant clam and the large conch. Finally, the largest giant clam was killed in the middle of the Black Pearl Lake. Along with it were 3 large conches the size of a bathtub. When the 4 large objects were fished up, the sailors on the ship cheered. Captain Cousteau said excitedly, "Sir, such wonderful shells and conches, it is incredible. Under your guidance, we were able to reap such a bountiful harvest. Remember to keep it a secret. The Black Pearl Lake will be the brightest pearl of the ocean in my territory. Whoever dares to leak it will receive bloody revenge." After saying these fierce words, Liszt patted Cousteau's shoulder and said in a pleasant tone, "Soon, I will grant you the status of a freedman. From now on, you can receive merits according to your official contributions. Follow me, and one day, you will become a noble." Today, he had completely exposed his talent. Wherever he pointed, there would be prey. Although Cousteau and the others did not dare to ask about Liszt's talent, it was inevitable that someone would open their mouths and expose today's matter. Therefore, he used the carrot and the stick to avoid possible risks in advance. Half an hour later, seeing a cheese hint in the sea, Liszt understood that the giant clam and the large conch's territorial struggle had probably ended. He blew the horn in response to a chi. Chapter 441. The flowers, carrying the heavy giant clams and conches, returned to the flower port. When it was time to count the harvest, Liszt could not help but feel emotional as he watched the dock workers carry the huge seashells down. He had always had the desire to manage the atoll and the Black Pearl Lake, but he lacked manpower. He couldn't even develop Black Horse Island, let alone the Black Pearl Lake. However, with the Siren He, he could harvest so many shells in one trip to the sea. Moreover, this sea monster could produce black and pink pearls. 2 or 3 trips a year are basically enough. The giant clams and conches grew very slowly and there was no way to overharvest them. Moreover, the large giant clams and conches seemed to be hiding in the waters around the Black Pearl Lake. It was rare to see them fighting for territory in the Black Pearl Lake, allowing a chi to happily take advantage of them. "Sir, what should we do with these seafood?" A knight, who served as a dock official, came to inquire. He was Liszt's former classmate, the second son of a small aristocrat. Liszt said directly, "Leave the big conches to the castle. Collect the giant clams' black pearls and give them to the castle. As for the meat, put it in the seafood market. Half of it will be given to the Thorns caravan to sell and the other half will be sold at a low price for Flower Town and the Port Town to consume." Whether it was Flower Town or the Port Town, apart from wheat and other food that needed to be purchased, the price of other seafood such as seafood was very low. Even serfs could afford to eat seafood every day. The reason was very simple. The sea had not been overfished and was rich in fishery resources. Unfortunately, this method did not have much technical content. The Coral Island was a small town near the sea and the lords were fishing for seafood in private. They either ate it in their own territory or secretly sold it to the surrounding towns. Flower Town's seafood business was hit by such a situation. The seafood that existed on the beach could no longer be sold at any price. That was why he now asked the oyster settlement's residents to move offshore and dive to catch other seafood, replacing the beach seafood with shallow-water seafood. Eventually, deep-water seafood, shallow-water seafood, and beach seafood would develop synchronously. "Master, there is too much meat in the conch. I'm afraid we won't be able to finish it, and it's not easy to store it. There is not much ice in the icehouse, so there is no way to keep the seafood fresh." Mrs. Abbey couldn't help but worry when she saw a large pile of conches being transported back to the castle. "Just make them into food and give them to me. I will distribute them to the knight of the territory and let them enjoy the nourishment of the sea monsters together." List said casually. He had already finished eating the meat of the six-headed Hydra King, and the skin had been made into snakeskin armor. The bones and other parts had been handed over to Crazy Truth to be processed into magic materials. Now in the gem space, there are not many items stored. List, who has a big business, no longer stores low-value items such as fine steel armor in the gem space. At present, in the gem space, there are only the red blood sword, the floating bottle, the soul storage jar, a spare set of mithril armor, 2 pairs of binoculars, the sapphire magic ring, the sheep head flag, the sapphire dragon bow, the soul-sinking wood, and a batch of poison thorny wood arrows. There are also 5 books, the Diary of the Descendants of Philip's Sons, which is used to learn the Sun language, to His Highness Annette, Curtis Truth, which records how the Lich and the Ghost Ship were made, the Sword Saint's letter given by Marquis Merlin, the unnamed Dragon Raising Manual, and the high-level Chi's secret book, the Red Sun Rising Fire. The mithril ore, jade, crystals, and black pearls were all sealed in the castle's warehouse. So, he saved a lot of space in the gem space for the storage of World of Warcraft meat, sea monster meat, dragon milk, and potions, ensuring that no matter where he goes, he can enjoy the same nutrition. This batch of conch meat can be stored in the gem space and enjoyed slowly. Of course, he is not stingy enough to enjoy all the sea monster meat alone. The Earth Knight of the territory can get a little, and the officials of the territory can also get a little. This is called sharing rain and dew. After the inventory was finished, there were not many pink pearls. Counting the one that Chris was studying, a total of 7 were harvested. 2 ordinary bowl-sized pink pearls were taken from the 3 bathtub-sized conches, 1 without a pink pearl, 2 goose egg-sized pink pearls, and 3 egg-sized pink pearls. These 7 pink pearls are not very regular oval shapes, and they all have flame-shaped lines. There are a lot of black pearls, a total of 136. Among them, the largest giant clam had contributed 29 black pearls. Plus the black pearls in List's inventory. There are a total of 3 basketball-sized black pearls, 11 bowl-sized black pearls, 48 fist-sized black pearls, and many smaller black pearls. There are also 2 washbasin-sized black pearls, 1 from the inventory, and 1 from the largest giant clam caught today. Moreover, there is an even larger black pearl, the size of a bathtub. There is no doubt that it was also taken from the largest giant clam. Well, so many pearls, am I rich again? List smiled as he looked at the black pearls piled up together, already imagining the future of the sea. Previously, there were 2 washbasin-sized black pearls, which have been made into calm pearls and armed on flowers and thorns. Although there is no strong storm between Black Horse Island and Coral Island, occasionally when there is strong convective weather, the activation of the calm pearls can greatly reduce the shaking of the ship and safely survive the storm. This bathtub must be used on my flagship in the future. When I get the shipbuilding technology, I will study the longitudinal sail technology and keel technology. Relying on rubber and thorn wood, I will definitely be able to build a super luxurious multi-masted sailboat. Yes, maybe I can study magic power. Black pearls can dispel wind attribute magic, even ordinary wind. So can reverse research, can I develop a magic array that can stimulate wind? Even more in-depth research, design a magic array that can control wind attribute magic, so that the storm can also become the driving force of the ship. Thinking about it, it is very interesting. However, to do this, there is no way to achieve it without a lot of financial, material, and manpower. I still have to continue to stay on Black Horse Island and slowly develop. Maybe before the territory is developed, I will successfully ride a dragon and become a dragon knight. At that time, it seems that there is no need to study any magic ships. In any case, he immediately put the black pearl the size of the bathtub into the gem space. The value of this black pearl is absolutely huge. Other black pearls are just stored in the warehouse. Looking at the shiny black pearls, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. I originally planned to give Levis a pink gem as a wedding gift, but now it seems that there is no need to give it. The pink gem can be given to a Chi or Chris, they are magicians and need spirit enhancement. Not giving Levis a pink gem. What to give as a gift is obvious. Give a black pearl the size of a basketball. Judging from the appearance alone, it is definitely more shocking than a gem. At first, a black pearl the size of a fist was sold to Levis for hundreds of gold coins. Now, a black pearl the size of a basketball, Levis will definitely be happy. A new week. Chapter 442. The giant clam and conch brought a lot of pearls, but the biggest contributor was actually the siren Chi. At night in the seascape villa, List patiently listened to Chi talking about what she saw in the Black Pearl Lake and how the giant clam and conch fought for territory. He first redefined new names for the giant clam and conch, black giant clam and pink conch, and classified both shells as sea monsters. The reason was very simple. The largest black giant clam was full of magic power and could also release magic, water bombs. Fighting alone against 3 strong pink conch, the water whirlpool and water bombs collided, smashing the reef on the seabed and making the water dark. Finally, when the 4 sea monsters were all exhausted, a Chi easily rushed out and ended their lives. On other battlefields, the pink conch and the black giant clam also won. Although the black giant clam withstood the attack of the pink conch, it suffered heavy damage and had to give up half of the Black Pearl Lake to the pink conch. Brother, Chi found that the black giant clam and pink conch are very smart. They saw Chi hunting a lot of big black giant clam and pink conch, so they took the initiative to stop fighting. The black giant clam left a lot of small black giant clam, and the pink conch left a lot of small pink conch, and then retreated. The small black giant clam and pink conch had no fishing value. So, the Black Pearl Lake is actually equivalent to a nursery base for shells? List was very curious about this behavior. The large black giant clam and pink conch obviously did not live in the Black Pearl Lake, they went to the surrounding deep sea to survive, leaving their seedlings in the Black Pearl Lake to breed. This was once the breeding ground of the black giant clam, but now half of it was lost to the pink conch. It was no longer appropriate to use the Black Pearl Lake as a name. Chi, do you think this sea lake should be called Black Powder Lake or Pearl Lake? List asked. Chi tilted her head and thought, brother, black powder sounds so bad, let's call it Pearl Lake. Black giant clam and pink conch can produce beautiful pearls. She held a bowl-sized black pearl and an egg-sized pink pearl, her eyes twinkling like stars. Women always had no resistance to pearls and gems, even though they were only provided by List for her to study magic arrays. As a great magician, studying magic had already become secondary. Researching magic arrays was the most important thing. After confirming that the name of the lake formed by the annular reef was Pearl Lake, List said goodbye and left. Before leaving, he told Chi to go to Pearl Lake often and pay attention to the situation of the black giant clam and the pink conch. One was to determine the breeding time of the 2 sea monsters, and the other was to wait for their next battle. The battle for territory would definitely not end so easily. Next time, it would probably be another glorious harvest. The shell sea monster in the annular reef and Pearl Lake came to an end. However, the work related to seafood wasn't over yet. List would go to the oyster settlement every day to identify the shallow water seafood caught by the fishermen. The variety of seafood in shallow water was obviously more abundant than on the beach. Not only were there more shellfish, shrimps and crabs, but there were also many novel creatures. There was a very tasty strange fish named by List as prawn gurgling, which had become one of the castle's daily dishes. There was a black lump with soft thorns, named sea cucumber, which had also become a daily dish in the castle. There was also a soft 8-clawed thing with legs and head, named squid, which had also become a daily dish in the castle. Mrs. Abbey was now busy cooking this seafood every day. The fishermen of the oyster settlement were thinking of ways to quickly catch the shallow water seafood. Unfortunately, List called for the smoke mission several times, but he didn't see the smoke mission complete. It was still the original Serpentines mission. The fishermen of the oyster settlement are no longer afraid of the shallow water area on the shore. They dare to dive to the bottom of the sea to fish for seafood, but they don't know all the seafood. As a seafood lover, why not instruct the fishermen to identify the delicacies in the sea? Reward: a mutated rubber tree. Until today. On September 5th, just after a rainstorm, the fishermen of the oyster settlement couldn't wait to go to the sea to fish. At dusk, they brought new seafood. When they arrived at the castle, they gave it to List to identify. List saw an ugly shell. At first glance, this shell looked like a fleshy shell, very ugly. However, he was excited. He had seen and eaten this kind of seafood on Earth. It was a very valuable seafood, known as the gold of the dining table, the crown of sea delicacies. In layman's terms, it was abalone. There was no need to say how valuable the abalones on Earth were. Whether or not the abalones in this world had such rich nutritional value, it only needed to be tasted a few times to determine. After List finished identifying the abalone's toxicity, he immediately had Mrs. Abby specialize in the cooking method of the abalones. He provided her with some ideas. Oil, abalones, seasonings, mixed them together, and roasted them. Soon, a fragrant oyster sauce braised abalone came out of the oven. The male servant served the oyster sauce braised abalone. The butler poured a glass of wine brewed by the territory's winery for List, and then he could start eating. The tableware was a pair of chopsticks. When eating in private, he used chopsticks. He didn't like to use knives and forks. He picked up a piece of soft abalone meat, put it in his mouth, and chewed for a moment. Not bad, the texture is delicate and smooth, and the taste of oil is a bit strong. Next time, I should put less and reflect the taste of the abalone itself. After eating several abalones in a row, he announced that abalones had become a daily dish in the castle. Lobster, crab, clam, mantis shrimp, razor clam, oyster, sea cucumber, squid, shrimp, snail, abalone, small dried fish, and occasionally turtle and geoduck, all of which had been included in the castle's menu. At present, the territory could basically rely on the sea to eat. When the abalones officially landed on the table, the long-awaited smoke mission had finally changed. Mission completed. Reward: a mutant variety of rubber tree fruit. The new mission was immediately released. Mission: 2 second-hand sailboats are about to be added to the territory fleet to undertake the cargo task of Black Horse Island and Flower Town. Consultant Gort, who purchased the ship, seems to have brought very good news. Please grasp this news. Reward: a mutant variety of corn grass. The fruit is a mutant variety of rubber tree. If nothing else, it should be a rubber tree propagated by a new cordyceps, a rubber tree that can bear fruit, a rubber fruit tree. List guessed in his heart, as for the mutant variety of corn grass, this time, it should be the turn of the corn cob, right? First it was the sorghum-like corn, then it was the oil corn that could be squeezed out of oil. The evolution direction of corn grass was obviously the corn cob. In fact, I suspect that this is a chain mission about the corn grass sprite worm. Is the corn grass sprite worm going to evolve? He suddenly thought, but quickly denied himself. It shouldn't be. The corn grass sprite worm has not been born for a long time, and there is no restlessness. The restlessness is the rubber worm triplets. Chapter 443. Regardless of whether the corn grass worm or the rubber worm evolved into a sprite, the smoke mission must be completed. List had no time to go to Black Horse Island again to observe the mutant rubber trees. He gave the task to Captain Costo to complete. If he could find a mature rubber tree, it would naturally be good. If not, the rubber tree must have sprouted around the new cordyceps. In any case, these newly sprouted rubber trees were worth promoting. Levis is getting married on September 12th. There is still a week to go. I have to go to Tulip Castle to help, otherwise I will be gossiped about. He asked the servant to pack up and prepare to go to Tulip Castle early the next morning. At night, the Port of Flowers finally welcomed two old brigs, and Gort returned with them. Sir, 2 cargo ships have been purchased, one from the Tulip Fleet and the other from the Beer Castle Fleet. However, the damage is a bit large and we need to repair it again. The 2 old ships cost a total of 652 gold coins. These are the remaining gold coins. After taking the gold coins and handing them over to Butler Carter for counting, List said, the task of repairing the cargo ship is also given to you. With rubber and thorny ironwood, it will not be very difficult. Try to update it to its best state. In addition, one is called the Mangrove, and the other is called the Pearl. The names of the ships were just simple code names, and he did not think much about them. Then, he began to ask, Advisor Gort, did you get any interesting information outside when you bought the ships this time? Gort suddenly said, Sir, I almost forgot, there is good news that you will like. The content of the smoke mission came. List smiled and asked, what good news? Viscount Jonas of Gravel Castle found 2 newly born sprite worms in his territory. One is a black nightshade sprite worm and the other is a Venus flytrap sprite worm. He is going to sell them to compensate for the losses of the Iron Hoof Island campaign. Gort said excitedly, these 2 sprite worms, one for 1,500 gold coins and the other for 1,200 gold coins. Sir, do you need them? Black nightshade sprite worm? Venus flytrap? List raised his eyebrows. He was determined to get his hands on the black nightshade worm. The most recent batch of black nightshade was about to mature. Although its effects were still unclear, it was a type of magic ingredient and its value would not be too low. The territory only had 1 black nightshade bug, and it only had 100 acres of land. With another black nightshade bug, he could farm another 100 or so acres of land. No matter how many magic ingredients were planted, they would always feel that it was too little. Therefore, the greatest value of sprite worms lay in whether or not there were magic ingredients to be planted. 1,500 gold coins for a nightshade bug. That's a bit expensive. Teacher Gort, put down the repair work on the Mangrove and the Pearl and focus on this black nightshade worm. I want to buy it. My bottom line is 1,200 gold coins. Once you reach my bottom line, for every 10 gold coins you cut, I'll let you take 1 gold coin. After hearing this, Gort's eyes lit up. Rest assured, my lord. I'm the best at this kind of thing. I can definitely get the black nightshade worm for 1,200 gold coins. I look forward to you bringing back the black nightshade bug. Right, sir, do you need a Venus flytrap? If I can buy it for 800 gold coins, then I want it. If not, then forget it. Similarly, for every 10 gold coins I cut, you can take 1. List thought for a moment and said. He knew what a Venus flytrap was. Some aristocrats would place 1 or 2 Venus flytraps in their bedrooms to catch mosquitoes. But in fact, the efficiency of a Venus flytrap simply did not have any effect on clearing mosquitoes. At most, it looked like a rarity. Although sprite worms were beautiful little creatures, he still felt that spending more than 800 gold coins for this useless sprite worm was not worth it. For the sake of completing the smoke mission. That was why he was willing to spend gold coins to buy this Venus flytrap. However, after making the decision, he quickly rubbed his temples. The black nightshade bug costs 1,200 gold coins, and the Venus flytrap costs 800 gold coins. That means I have to spend 2,000 gold coins. Where do I get so many gold coins? Do I really have to borrow money from my grandmother? It wasn't easy to ask for money. If Ulvera had not taken the initiative to lend him money, he would have decided to sell the red blood sword. No matter how rich the Tulip Castle was, he was only using the income of the estate as collateral to withdraw gold coins in advance, that's all. He was not borrowing money. Deep down, he was not used to borrowing money from others. However, the black nightshade bug and the Venus flytrap were not to be missed. Phew! After spitting out a mouthful of turbid air, he instructed the butler Carter, "Mr. Carter, prepare some powder conch meat for me. One for the Count and Countess, and one for my grandmother." "Master, how much do you think is suitable?" 5 caddies. "Forget it, 10 caddies each." 10 caddies was almost the size of a wash basin, and it was the entire flesh of a powder conch. Giving away a powder conch the size of a wash basin was very distressing. However, he was too embarrassed to do the same thing again and only gave 5 caddies of the 6-headed sea serpent king, which weighed several tons, to the Count. The Count was so angry that he repeatedly ridiculed him with this matter. In addition, "Pick out the smallest black pearls and wear them into a necklace as a gift for my grandmother, to thank her for providing me with the fig worm." Carter bowed and left. "As you wish, master." The task of finding the rubber fruit tree was given to Costo, the task of negotiating the price of the black nightshade bug and the Venus flytrap was given to Gort, the repair of the mangrove and the pearl was given to Isaiah. List early the next morning. With 2 gifts, he went to Tulip Castle. After meeting in the study, the Count joked, "How many caddies of World of Warcraft meat are you giving me this time?" 10 caddies. "But it's not World of Warcraft meat, it's sea monster meat, a low-level sea monster called the powder conch. This 10 caddies is all the meat of the largest powder conch." This was, of course, a white lie. The largest were 3 powder conches the size of a bathtub. The Count had no shortage of low-level World of Warcraft meat to eat, he just needed to taste it. "It seems that you have had a lot of harvest recently." The Count was quite satisfied with the 10 caddies of powder conch meat. "I haven't had any harvest recently, not even a sprite worm. Moreover, I even borrowed 800 gold coins from my sister. Do you think sprite worms are like wheat that can be found everywhere? In fact, I don't think sprite worms are that rare. Father, according to my observations for more than a year, I found that the probability of sprite worms being born can be influenced." List decided to reveal some information to his father in order to increase the number of sprite worms in the family. The stronger the family, the better protection he could obtain. Therefore, his ideas had been changing. He knew how to share some less important experiences to help the family develop. How? The Count was moved. He sat up straight and listened with a humble attitude. The importance of sprite worms to the territory was deeply understood by every lord. List did not speak nonsense. Chapter 444. Increase the supply of nutrients? Just like you did in your territory, collect the excrement, and then water the plants. Sorry, List, many people don't quite understand what you do in your territory. The Count frowned. List said calmly, "I have heard people call me Dung Vegetable Baron behind my back, and even call Flower Town Big Dung Town. This is just their ignorance. You know the wizard's triangle theory, which believes that matter, magic, and spirit are a cycle. In fact, nature is the biggest cycle. Explain in detail. Let me give you an example. Grass sprouts from the ground and is eaten by a sheep. After the sheep digests the food, it produces excrement. Where there is excrement, grass tends to grow very vigorously. Because the excrement is decomposed by invisible tiny organisms and becomes nutrients for the plants. In this way, a complete biological chain is formed. Next. List had to recall the biological knowledge he learned in high school and junior high school, and explain to the Count, who asked all kinds of strange questions. He answered questions such as, why does grass grow on excrement? The sheep is the consumer, so does it pay? What does photosynthesis mean? The sun is very hot and I am photosynthesizing, how can you guarantee that the sheep has to shit on the grass, it can give to the trees, and so on. In the end, there was no need for List to summarize. The Count had already summed it up himself, so, vegetables grown from excrement are the best? Yes, father, you can try it in your territory. The vigorous development of Flower Town explains everything. I am called Dung Vegetable Baron by others, but now I am a young Viscount and an elite Earth Knight. I have more than 20 sprite worms and 2 lesser sprites in my territory. You are indeed favored by the glory of the night. Of course I am favored by the glory of the night, but you should also see that in addition to the glory of the night, scientific farming is also very helpful. The Count pondered for a moment and said, "What you said makes sense. I will try to grow crops with excrement in my territory. I can try to grow the food that the serfs eat. However, I will only choose the food cultivated by the sprites in Tulip Castle. That is the food that I can rest assured about." That was it. Whether the Count believed it or not, Liszt said no more. After all, they were not real relatives, and he still had a barrier in his heart against the Earl and the others. He didn't see Levis, who had already gone out to invite guests. After leaving the study, he went straight to the small castle next to Coral City to give the gift to his grandmother. Ulvera was there as well. She was almost always in Tulip Castle or Little Castle, rarely returning to her own territory. "Sister, are you here too? It just so happens that I've brought some low-level sea monster meat that I just caught for grandmother. There's about 5 kilograms of it. You and grandmother can taste it together." Liszt asked someone to send the meat to the small castle's kitchen. "Are you here to help Tulip Castle?" Ulvera asked. "Yes." Madame Penelope was very happy to see her grandson arrive. "Our family's glorious child has sent me meat, and the meat of a low-level sea monster at that. This always warms the heart of an old woman like me. If your mother had done this, I think she would have been a qualified countess. In fact, I not only brought you sea monster meat, but also a necklace of black pearls that can calm the mind." He took the box handed over by the servant and took out a necklace of black pearls that looked like prayer beads. "This is a black pearl, the kind that can disperse wind-attributed magic." Ulvera exclaimed, "It's really beautiful, such a bright black. Although it's not a gem, it's rounder than ordinary jade and crystal. Such a necklace is simply beautiful to the extreme." Liszt put the necklace of black pearls around Madame Penelope's neck. "It sets off your temperament, grandmother. I'm already over 70 years old, I don't have any temperament." Despite saying so, Madame Penelope got up and went to the mirror. Carefully looking in the mirror, she happily looked at the necklace of black pearls around her neck. Ulvera pulled Liszt and asked, "Do you still have a necklace of black pearls?" "I'm sorry, sister. It's not easy to collect so many black pearls. I believe that on your birthday next year, I will certainly be able to collect a new necklace of black pearls and give it to you as a gift." Ulvera smiled with satisfaction. Soon. Madame Penelope had already admired the necklace of black pearls and hung it around her neck, not taking it off. Perhaps she was worried that her granddaughter would snatch it away. She sat down and said with a smile, "Speak, Liszt, what are you going to take from grandmother?" "I just came to give you a gift, that's all. If you just brought me the meat of a low-level sea monster, I believe that you are simple. However, such a necklace does not have such a simple purpose." "Well, I can't hide anything from you, grandmother." Liszt coughed. "I don't know if grandmother has heard, but Viscount Yunus is preparing to sell 2 sprite worms to ease the financial pressure on his territory. A black nightshade sprite worm and a flytrap worm. I want to buy them, but I am short of money." The meaning was clear. Madame Penelope directly asked, "How much do you need?" "I estimate that I can buy these 2 sprite worms for about 2,000 gold coins. Therefore, grandmother, you can lend me 2,000 gold coins. 2,000 gold coins is not a small number. Do you really want to buy these 2 sprite worms? The black nightshade sprite worm is somewhat useful, its fruit can be eaten, but the flytrap worm is useless and can only be used as a potted ornament," said Madame Penelope. The type of auxiliary magic ingredient, the black nightshade, was still a secret. No one knew that the black nightshade also produced a magic ingredient. Therefore, the value of the black nightshade sprite worm was not high. I need them. In my opinion, each sprite worm, as long as it is properly used, can display great value. Just like my thorn sprite Ella, it used to be a thorn sprite worm, but now it has become the brightest gem in my territory. Since you have decided, well, I will raise the 2,000 gold coins as soon as possible. Madame Penelope agreed to lend the gold coins, and then said, the interest of 2,000 gold coins cannot be exchanged for this black pearl necklace. They are more precious than the white pearl necklace. Then, you can take away another potted plant. Every time he came to grandmother, he would never return empty-handed, so a potted plant was a must. Liszt walked to the balcony with anticipation, activated magic eyes, and carefully observed the potted plants. However, he was disappointed. There was no sign of magic in any of the potted plants. So, he collected his mood and chose a pot of blueberries that were growing more vigorously and slightly useful. Blueberries are a relatively common fruit and taste good. There are a lot of blueberries in this pot. He can try to use its fruit to plant a batch on Black Horse Island. When I return to Flower Town, I will take this potted plant with me. Now, grandmother, please continue to take care of it. So. Chapter 445. In Tulip Castle, Liszt quickly threw himself into the wedding preparations. However, he did not have much work to do. Tulip Castle had hundreds of servants, and the work could be done smoothly. In addition to the Count, Madame Marie could make decisions. There was no need for family members who had already been enfeoffed to make decisions. Liszt did not want to fight for power with Madame Marie in the castle. He only occasionally supervised the progress of the wedding preparations and kept an eye on his brother Levis. Most of the time, he was still remotely directing the construction of the territory. The knight, who traveled between Flower Town and Tulip Castle, reported the progress of the territory construction to him every day without interruption. There was also fresh dragon milk and other delicious food. The mangrove and the pearl were being overhauled in the flower harbor. Basically, the wooden boards in the damaged parts were removed, replaced with new thorny ironwood, and then glued with rubber wood. This repair required very little technical content, but the effect was absolutely excellent. The adhesion of rubber was too strong. Even without removing the old wood, the holes could be filled with rubber and wood to make the two old sailboats look new. In fact, the previous flowers and thorns had been reinforced with rubber, and the performance of the ships had surpassed that of the new ships, without any strain. News of the rubber fruit tree also came 3 days later. After Captain Costo returned to Black Horse Island, he did not find any fruit-bearing rubber trees, but he saw many budding rubber tree seedlings around the new cordyceps. According to Liszt's previous instructions, Administrative Officer Blair organized people to dig out these seedlings and replant them in rows around the cordyceps. It was basically concluded that these seedlings were the rubber fruit trees rewarded by the smoke task. On the other side, Chris Truth also had good news. In the letter sent by the knight, she had figured out the effect of the pink pearls, dispelling the surrounding water attribute magic. The black pearl of the black giant clam could dispel the surrounding wind attribute magic, the pink pearl of the pink conch could dispel the surrounding water attribute magic. The egg-sized pink pearl, once made into magic equipment, could dispel all the water attribute magic within a radius of 100 meters. Such an effect, together with the sea-calming pearl made of black pearls, could almost avoid all the storms and waves on the sea, allowing the ship to sail safely. It actually has such a powerful effect. Is this specially prepared for my upcoming sailing era? Liszt was very excited as he read the contents of the letter. The sea-calming divine pearl was already strong enough to suppress all storms, and the pink pearl could suppress all waves. Apart from sea monsters, what else was there to be afraid of in the sea? Most importantly, Virginia Truth, who lived in the Soul Storage Tank, had already described the keel-fixing technique. In the future, when the keel-fixing technology was used in shipbuilding, they wouldn't even have to be afraid of sea monsters in the sea. In this way, the storms, waves, and sea monsters have all been cleared. Can I lead the fleet to leave the aquamarine sea and sail towards the Devil's Sea? Then cross the Devil's Sea to explore further? What's on the other side of the Devil's Sea? Liszt vaguely speculated that it was the residence of the Sun's Child, which was the world described on the floating bottle, the hometown described in the diary of Old Phil, the ancestor of the cobbler's shop, which was the descendant of his friend Philip Sunday. It was worth mentioning that Liszt had learned all the Sun script recorded in the diary. This was a set of complex but contained a set of rules, which made him believe that it was definitely a highly developed civilization that could create such complex and regular characters. Unfortunately, Philip's recorded Sunscript was still too little, and this little vocabulary could not be used for reading and writing. When I developed the magic power drive and vertical sail technology, coupled with the keel fixing technique, as well as the sea calming pearl, wind and sea calming pearl, water, the Devil's Sea definitely won't be able to stop me. He had already decided to make the pink pearl into a new sea calming pearl. In order to distinguish the black pearl products, he would use wind and water as suffixes. In a good mood, he replied to Chris, asking her to continue to study the pink pearl and see if she could make the sea calming pearl, water with reference to the sea calming pearl, wind. Chris was not good at making magic equipment. If it didn't work, then Liszt would have to invite Glanny Truth to make it. The letter was given to the knight to take back. Liszt sat at the round table in the garden of Tulip Castle. He felt that apart from being a bit poor, he had basically never had any worries in his transmigrated life. Since the smoke mission, good news had always been coming one after another. He had to sigh at the power of fate. With just a slight trigger, he had really become a son of glory. However, before he could finish sighing, another knight from the flower town came and brought new good news. Sir Lord, Advisor Gort has sent a letter. He opened the letter. The content was very simple. After discussing with Viscount Yunus, Gort set the price of the Black Nightshade Sprite and the Venus Flytrap Sprite. The Black Nightshade Sprite was cut down to 1,100 gold coins, while the Venus Flytrap Sprite was cut down to 700 gold coins. It was 200 gold coins less than Liszt's bottom line. Of course, it was actually 180 gold coins less, because Gort had to be given a commission of 20 gold coins. After reading the letter, Liszt immediately took the 2,000 gold coins he borrowed from his grandmother and went straight to the Gravel City. After arriving at the Gravel City, he was immediately welcomed into the Gravel Castle by Viscount Yunus. If it weren't for the cash flow, I would really be reluctant to sell these 2 sprite worms. It's rare to be blessed by the glory of the night. 2 sprite worms were born in a month, but in the end, I have to sell them for cash. After the pleasantries, Viscount Yunus directly complained, "It really hurts. After this year's development order is issued, we can go to the Eagle Kingdom to plunder resources and make up for our losses. You will also continue to participate in the development order?" That's what I prepared. It's not a surprise. You have the middle-rank World of Warcraft docent, which can cooperate with Sir Count to be successful in sieging cities on the battlefield. For you, military achievements are not difficult to obtain. I don't even dare to guess how far you will go in the future. Yunus was speechless and said with emotion. Liszt smiled, "I will develop step by step. My fief is currently poor. To be honest, in order to buy your 2 sprite worms, I had to borrow the gold coins from my grandmother." After bemoaning each other's poverty for a while, the transaction was officially carried out. After paying the agreed amount of 1,800 gold coins, Viscount Yunus took Liszt to the location of the sprite worm's worm stock, where Liszt could smoothly contract it. After the contract was completed, he collected the worm stock and had lunch in the Gravel Castle. In the afternoon, Liszt hurriedly returned to Tulip Castle. Chapter 446. Roger Golden Ear's arrival was to pave the way for the arrival of his sister, Rosalia Golden Ear. However, the Tulip family had already made proper arrangements. Birch City's other castle would serve as the bride's temporary residence. The wedding of a marquis's daughter to a count's son would certainly be incomparable to that of a Grand Duke's daughter. The Tulip family's financial and material resources would also be incomparable to that of the Taro family. Nevertheless, it would still be lively. As the wedding date approached, aristocrats who were on good terms with the Tulip family arrived one after another. Among them, the most distinguished were naturally the Masiro couple, along with the newly married Miopal and the little princess couple. As the Tulip castle became more and more lively, Liszt was also extremely busy. He was naturally a member of the groomsmen group, and he also had to shoulder the heavy responsibility of receiving guests. Moreover, he also had to bear the harassment of the female guests. There were always hot and bold aristocratic ladies who admired his appearance. As a single aristocrat, these harassment were unavoidable. However, these were not the source of his worries, nor was it the awkwardness of Rosalia Golden Ear, whom he once had an ambiguous relationship with, about to accompany his bride to the Coral Island. The real worry was brought about by Miopal. Strictly speaking, it was caused by the smoke mission. It was caused by the smoke mission. Every time he met with his cousin, he would be abnormally embarrassed. His heart was in a mess and tangled like a mess. Liszt. Miopal patted his shoulder. What are you thinking about? Angela asked you what kind of aristocratic young ladies you like. She knows a lot of aristocratic young ladies who are at the marriageable age and can act as a matchmaker for you. Beside Miopal, the little princess, Angela, was looking at him with a smile. Liszt came back to his senses. With an expression that only he knew, he looked at the newly married couple in front of him and said with a smile, "Sorry, I was thinking that I still had 2 sprite worms and didn't have time to settle the worm stalks, so I was a bit distracted." "Right, did the Grand Duke give you a greater sprite?" Miopal snappily said, "It's an oat grater sprite, but the current topic isn't the grater sprite, it's what kind of aristocratic young ladies you like." Angela added, "Liszt, you are different from Miopal and Levis in that you are unable to inherit the title of nobility. Marrying an aristocratic young lady would be of great help to the construction of your territory and the promotion of your title. Grandfather said that you have great potential, but having a noble wife can ensure that your potential can be realized. I'll just let nature take its course. I'm still young, and I want to focus on cultivation for now. I need to build a solid foundation so that I can break through the shackles of the earth in the future." Liszt made up an excuse. "One day, when I want to find a noble lady to expand my family, I will definitely ask you for help." Seeing that the couple was so worried about his marriage, Liszt felt even more conflicted. But very soon, in his heart, he decided to cut the Gordian knot and give up the new smoke mission. Just 2 days ago, after he contracted the black nightshade bug and the Venus flytrap, the smoke mission was completed. Mission completed. Reward: mutated corn grass fruit. The reward made his imagination run wild. Mutated fruit, it sounded like the corn grass had really mutated into a corn cob. He quickly ordered Blair to carefully observe the corn grass field to find the new mutated corn grass. Subsequently, the smoke mission was updated. This caused him to be at a loss for 2 days. Mission: the continuation of the bloodline is the most important matter for an aristocratic family. Your elder brother Levis is about to enter into marriage and spread the family's branches. However, your cousin seems to have encountered some trouble. His and Angela Sapphire's sexual affairs are not harmonious, and he may need your help. Reward: Miopal's collection of piano scores. The information contained in this smoke mission was very rich. Sexual affairs were not harmonious. Understandable. However, Liszt was very confused about the need for his help. What could he do to help when someone else's sexual affairs were not harmonious? That was why he was at a loss. If it were someone else, with Angela's identity and appearance, he would not be at a loss and would extend a helping hand. However, Miopal was his cousin, and they had a very good relationship. Even though he was getting closer and closer to the moral standards of this world, he was still unable to do such an outrageous thing. Therefore, he decided to cut the Gordian knot. I have recently been studying the piano. Miopal, I remember that you have a few piano scores in your collection. How about you give me one? No problem. Miopal readily agreed. This made Liszt feel relieved. Fortunately, the mission reward was only a piano score, which could change the mission. If the reward was a sprite or information related to the fire dragon bone, perhaps his sense of morality would not be able to control him. Even if it was incest, he would still have to complete it. The knot in his heart was untied. Liszt restored his usual indifference. However, he felt that sooner or later, cousin Miopal's head would be green. A life without harmony would sooner or later have problems. He could only wish the Taro family the best and ensure the purity of their bloodline. The morning before the wedding. The official fleet of Golden Island finally docked at the Coral City harbor. Marquis Roderick and his wife, along with the nobles of Golden Island who came to attend the wedding, as well as their soon-to-be married daughter, Rolia Golden Wheat, headed to Birch City's castle. They would spend the night in Birch City and come to Tulip Castle tomorrow to attend the wedding. As the second son of the Tulip family, Liszt needed to serve as the best man. The best men were all familiar members: cousin Raleigh Pinecone from Aunt Melinda's family, Aubrey Wildgrass, the son of Viscount Trick, and the 3 sons of the Baron. Only unmarried men could serve as best men. Similarly, only unmarried women could serve as bridesmaids. Rolia's sister, Ranesa Golden Wheat, was a member of the bridesmaid group. When they took time to rehearse the wedding process, it was inevitable that there would be face-to-face scenes. Hi, Liszt. Hello, Ranesa. I learned from my brother that you have been conferred the title of Viscount because of your military exploits. Congratulations. Ranesa said with a smile. Do you have your own island or city? Black Horse Island is next to Coral Island. It must be a beautiful island. It's not beautiful, it's just an undeveloped deserted island. I currently built a small town on it, but I don't have the money to build any more. Difficulties will always pass, won't they? That's right. Then, there was no other topic to talk about. In addition, rehearsals were tiring, so the day ended like this. Night. In the guest room of Tulip Castle, Miopal took a bath and changed his clothes before returning to his bedroom. Looking at Angela lying on the bed, he could not help but be excited. Angela, do you feel full of passion after changing to a new environment? I believe that if we work hard, we will have our own crystallization of love. I will wait and see. It is my duty to give birth to a child for the Taro family. Angela responded with a smile, but there was a strange look in her eyes. She had been working hard for almost a month, but there was no movement in her stomach. Chapter 447. The wedding was held as scheduled without any twists and turns. Liszt took out his gift, a black pearl the size of a basketball. Leaves' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Naturally, he couldn't be more satisfied. After the luncheon, the guests left one after another. Miopal and Angela were also ready to leave. Before leaving, Liszt repeatedly said, "Cousin, don't forget to send me your piano score." Don't worry. After watching his uncle and aunt's family leave, Liszt also returned to the flower town. He had not been back for several days as there were a lot of matters waiting to be dealt with. Today was September 12th, and the day after tomorrow was September 14th, the Count's birthday. He still had to return. In short, interpersonal communication was a waste of time. By the time he returned to Flower Town, it was already dark. The Venus fly worm and the black nightshade worm were to be brought to Black Horse Island, where the worm stalks would be placed. When he decided to buy the 2 sprite worms, he arranged for people to open up a black nightshade field and a small Venus fly worm field on Black Horse Island. "Sir, this is the newly discovered mutant corn grass. It looks very strange. Its ears are very thick, like a stick. Isaiah used the light from the crystal lamp in the hands of the castle servant to guide List to the new corn grass location. It was obvious that the corn grass was different. Originally, the ears of corn grass were tillers. A corn grass could grow several ears, but the ears were very small, with only a few sparse seeds inside. The current ears had the embryonic shape of a corn cob, about the thickness of a baby's arm and the length of 2 fingers. Unfortunately, it was still not a magic ingredient and still belonged to an ordinary plant. List said directly, "Call it cob corn, like corn and oil corn. Protect their seeds and plant these corn on a large scale on Black Horse Island in the future. Try to plant all the wasteland. Regardless of the growth, it was good to harvest a little." After returning to the castle, he carefully observed the corn grass worm and found that the little guy was emotionally stable, physically stable, and showed no signs of change. He could not see any possibility of evolution. Then he looked at the rubber worm triplets. Since one of them became restless, the triplets have calmed down, synchronized their actions and emotions, as if they were a whole. There was no possibility of evolution. "Do you want to evolve or not?" He muttered to himself, "If you don't evolve, then why are all the sprite worm missions related to you guys these days? The related plants are also mutating every day. Peanut worm, alfalfa worm, tulip worm, corn worm, 2 wheat worms, tomato worm, fragrant coconut worm, black nightshade worm, snake blood fruit worm, apple worm, barley worm, fig worm, blackberry worm, pea worm, smoke grass worm, and green tea tree worm were all eating, drinking, and sleeping. Even Ella stayed in the castle and did not go out. It was too hot outside. List and Achi were not there. After bullying the 8 little ones, Ella had to stop. However, every day, a servant would bring cold water so that it could soak in the water and enjoy the coolness. Wow! It raised its head, looked at List, and did not move. Elves had all sorts of strange personalities. Most of them didn't like to live in groups, and many of them weren't even close to humans. It was only after forming a contract with a human that it would become emotionally close to the contractor. Ella, for example, was obviously not a gregarious, human-friendly elf. It was irascible and domineering. It would attack at the slightest disagreement. Only List could subdue it. Elksun sent another batch of magic books and cheated List of more than a dozen gold coins. In order to support the 3 magicians, Chris, Paris, and Achi, he did spend a lot of money. Ordinary magicians did not have so much money to buy so many magic books. He was reluctant to buy them. Only List, who had knowledge is power, and science and technology are the primary productive forces, in his heart, would attach so much importance to books. Elksun also brought an ordinary light magic, light bomb. There are fewer types of light magic, and even fewer casting schemes. Generally, only great magicians study light magic. Great magicians are generally not short of money, and magicians who are short of money generally do not have light magic. Viscount, with my channels, I am afraid it will be difficult to get light magic again. An ordinary light magic, 5 gold coins, an advanced light magic, 30 gold coins. Mr. Elksun, my contribution to magic is very sincere. List raised the price significantly on the basis of the original 2 gold coins for ordinary magic and 20 gold coins for advanced magic. Elksun's eyes lit up. You can rest assured that even if I break my legs, I will find more light magic for you. It was not easy to find a sucker. He was willing to pay such a high price for light magic. Of course, there was the intention of training Paris to become a light magician, but deep in his heart, List also had the ambition of the light dragon. All metal dragons and gem dragons were the focus of national search and protection, and only elemental dragons were the most convenient to find. He now had clues to 4 dragons in his hands. One was the illusory smoke dragon. He didn't know where it was and whether it was dead or alive. One was the invisible dragon that left a space gem. It may visit Flower Town again and taste the smoke grass. The other was the dead fire dragon. The bones of the fire dragon may be revived and a new fire dragon may be born. The last one was the light dragon that turned Paris into a black dragon. It lived in the red maple mountain of the Grand Duchy of Maple Leaf and had not been hunted by the dragon slayer warriors. In addition, the sapphire dragon, the white iron dragon, and so on, were all lone dragons and were difficult to get. Of course. The difficulty of getting the smoke dragon, invisible dragon, light dragon, and fire dragon was basically no less than whimsical. At least he didn't know any way to ride a dragon smoothly. The ambition of the four-headed dragon was just to prepare for a rainy day. If a man has no dream, what is the difference between him and a salted fish? List's dream was to ride a dragon and soar in the sky, fearless. After dividing a batch of magic books and giving them to Chris Truth, List asked about the progress of the Pink Pearl research. "Sir Viscount, I may not be able to make it into a magic equipment like the Calm Pearl. The principles of runes and magic arrays are not difficult, but the technical means are difficult. I don't have Mr. Glanny's exquisite production ability." Chris said apologetically. "It doesn't matter. It's the same to ask Mr. Glanny to make the Calm Pearl, but it will cost a lot more money. By the way, Sir Viscount, I will make the pink conch shell into the horn you need." Chris took out a big trumpet-like conch shell. "This magic equipment is very simple to make and the effect is very good. I will blow it here and the whole town can hear it." Chapter 448. With the repair of the mangrove and the pearl, they officially joined the voyage. Together with the thorns, the 3 brig cargoes were enough to meet the shipping needs between Black Horse Island and Flower Town. Therefore, the Flower became the exclusive ship for List and territorial officials to travel to and from the island. When it is not needed, it will dock at the Flower port. When it is needed, there is no need to wait for the ship to return and set off immediately. After arriving at Black Horse Island, the port town did not change much. All the serfs were arranged to reclaim various farmlands and excavate the volcanic glass underground. List's requirement was that all the volcanic glass must be mined before all the farmlands on Black Horse Island were reclaimed. Otherwise, once the farmland was cultivated with crops, it would be difficult to turn the land over for mining. In the rubber garden, rows of new rubber tree seedlings, centered on the rubber tree cordyceps, grew vigorously. These were the new varieties of cordyceps, and the rubber tree cordyceps were constantly reproducing new rubber tree seedlings without slowing down. Is it like a tree seedling that can breed more than 100 acres of rubber garden at one time? List looked at the rubber garden with relief. It felt like the land was not planted with rubber trees, but with gold. After inspecting the rubber garden, he quickly rushed to the pasture, which was recently named Black Horse Ranch. At Black Horse Ranch, List changed to lightning and ran to the bone yard. At this time, the bone yard, between the 5 resurrected dragon bones, was already filled with volcanic glass. It was volcanic glass that did not release the fire dragon magic. "When the Count's birthday is over, I must be here, collect the fire dragon magic, and store all the fire dragon magic for a rainy day." There was no time to do this work now. He touched the fire dragon bones and felt no change. He still couldn't figure out what the 5 bones were brewing. So he could only leave first. He continued to the north of the island to inspect the green tea plant. With the green tea sprite, the process of breeding green tea trees became simple. He cut the branches of the green tea tree and put them in the ground. Under the influence of the green tea tree cordyceps, these branches germinated easily and grew into new green tea trees. This world's agriculture still adopted the primitive slash-and-burn method because the sprite worms restricted humans' exploration of farming. Everyone was accustomed to crudely growing crops under the influence of the worm stalks. For lords and serfs, without the worm stalks, it would be a barren wasteland. List wanted to change all of this. However, he did not know how to invent chemical fertilizers. At most, he used organic fertilizers. Because of this, he was given the nickname Dung Vegetable Baron. I don't know how to invent fertilizers at all. I only know how to compost and add a little nutrition to the farmland. I don't know how to develop pesticides either. Crops can only wait to die if they get sick. But I shouldn't neglect another point: water conservancy. Looking at a small river flowing by the green tea garden, he thought. On Earth, many people in China had starved to death during a period of natural disasters. However, with the focus on the research of fertilizers and pesticides, as well as the vigorous construction of water conservancy, the grain production increased year by year. Coupled with the introduction of a large number of high-quality seeds from abroad, as well as improved seeds by Li Zhensheng and other agricultural experts, the crisis of food and clothing was finally overcome. Fertilizers, pesticides, water conservancy, seeds, in List's view, these were the four means to represent a bumper harvest. Currently, fertilizers and pesticides were impossible. Seed improvement depended on the sprites. The only thing that could be completed in the territory was probably the water conservancy project. When the development order arrives, a new batch of serfs will be transported back to Black Horse Island. The first thing to do is to build a comprehensive water conservancy project and make reasonable use of the water resources of Black Horse Island. Thus, another agenda appeared on his desk. Speaking of which, there were too many projects that he needed to vigorously promote now. Almost every industry took a lot of energy to complete. However, he only dabbled in every industry. He didn't want to give up, but he didn't have the manpower to develop it. He could only barely maintain a half-dead state. If serfs could move freely, he believed that the high welfare would attract a large number of refugees to settle down. However, serfs were privately owned by the lord and were prohibited from moving. Those free people often did not work in agriculture. They were mostly craftsmen. In many places, craftsmen did not lack food and drink. They would not be attracted to Flower Town. On Black Horse Island, he did not stay overnight. That night, he took the flowers back to Flower Town. Because the next day was the Count's birthday, he had to rush to Tulip Castle to celebrate his father's birthday. Just as he was ready to listen to the waves and sleep at sea for the night, suddenly, he heard the familiar sound of a horn. It was the siren Achi calling him. According to the tone and length of the horn, List understood that Achi had good news to share with him. Of course, it was impossible to meet in this situation. So he immediately picked up the horn and blew his answer: "Meet at the Sea View Villa tomorrow morning. Sailing all night." Just before dawn, List returned to the flower port. Instead of returning to the castle, he went directly to the Sea View Villa and saw that Achi was already waiting in the Sea View Villa. She swam very fast and came back here early to rest for the night. "Brother, you are back. Achi has something good to share with you." "What good thing? What pearls did you catch?" "Not really." Achi waved downstairs. Soon, the mangrove sprite, Nami, flew up with a fat sprite worm. Then she stuffed the sprite worm into List's hands. Chirp. She tilted her head and looked at List's pocket. Seeing the sprite worm, List's eyes lit up, and then he took out a peanut nougat and handed it to Nami. Chirp, chirp. Nami held the peanut nougat and happily flew to the side to taste her food. Playing with the somewhat nervous dark green sprite worm, List asked in surprise, "Achi, what kind of sprite worm is this?" "It's a very, very long plant. It grows densely around the mangrove forest on Mangrove Island." "Brother, look, I brought one back," she said, waving her hand to tie a dark green, slightly yellowish strip of plant with a hose and send it to List. Seeing this familiar shape, List immediately recognized it. "This is kelp." "You actually found a kelp sprite worm? Can sprite worms also be bred in the sea? Have you contracted it?" "Well, I was going to catch it and let you contract it, brother, but it secretly bit Chi, so Chi contracted it. It doesn't matter, there is no difference between your contract and mine. Even the siren Chi was List's private property, so he naturally did not mind who contracted this kelp sprite worm. He was just surprised. Plants in the sea could also breed sprite worms. In other words, this kelp worm lived in the sea. List then carefully observed and found that the kelp worm was different. It had 2 gills on its neck, which was probably what it relied on to survive in the sea. List had to admit that sprites were really strange. Handing the kelp worm to Chi to put away, he thought with pain and joy, kelp is a delicious food. Now, my territory will have another specialty. So far, I haven't found any kelp in the sea around Coral Island. It's a pity that I have to let it run its course. Chapter 449. There were also sprite worms in the sea, which was a huge discovery. List could not help but think about how to obtain the resources of the sea sprite worms. He could swim but could not dive. It was difficult to hook up with marine sprite worms, and it was also very troublesome to move the worm stalks in the sea. Moreover, the worm stalks in the deep water area may not be able to adapt to the shallow water environment. Even if the worm stalks could adapt, the marine plants affected by the worm stalks could not be moved offshore, which was also useless. After all, marine plants had fixed habitat requirements. The current situation. Even as an elite Earth Knight of the Nightmare Medicine School, he could not conquer the sea. But the siren Chi could do it. She was a sprite of the sea. She could easily contract the sprite worms in the sea, and then move the worm stalks at will. As for the relationship between Chi and himself, List was never worried. They had an inseparable foundation of kinship. If even Chi had to be wary and distrusted, then life would be too tiring. Of course. List had to contract the sprite worms himself. Chi, in order to facilitate the management of the sprite worms, be careful not to contract the sprite worms you find in the shallow water area in the future. Let me contract them so that the full potential of the sprite worms can be brought into play. Okay, Chi understands. When playing in the sea in the future, remember to pay more attention to the various kinds of seaweed. Once there is a sprite worm, you must not let it go. Okay. Since the discovery of the sprite worms in the sea, List decided to vigorously cultivate Chi in the future. In the future, he could rule the sky and the earth of his territory, so Chi would assist him in ruling the sea. On the Count's birthday, List also gave a black pearl, but it was only a bowl-sized black pearl. Following the discovery of the black giant clam and the pink conch, black and pink pearls were no longer rare items. Even the black pearls, which were numerous in number, were greatly devalued in List's mind. Now he was only interested in basketball-sized black pearls. Because basketball-sized black pearls, after being made into calm pearl, wind, could disperse all the wind-attributed magic power within 100 meters, just enough to shelter a ship. Any smaller, and it would not be enough to cover the ship, and its value would naturally be greatly reduced. Therefore, other than Levis's wedding, where he was willing to give a basketball-sized black pearl, he would choose bowl-sized black pearls for other festive gifts. He had even decided to sell the black pearls as a special product to increase the territory's revenue. The small black pearls and pink pearls can all be sold. The pearls that can be used to make the sea-calming divine pearls of wind and water must be stored as strategic resources. However, I always feel that the names sea-calming divine pearls of wind and water are a bit too long. Why don't we just call them sea-calming divine pearls of wind and water? A wind-calming divine pearl, a water-calming divine pearl, and a dragon-calming bone would form the sea-calming three-piece set. It was a family banquet at noon. That was why none of his followers came. The Count sat on the high seat of honor, Madame Marie sat on the right, Madame Penelope sat in the middle of the long table, and Levis and Loria sat in the middle on the other side. Next to her was Rolia's younger sister, Ranesa. She would be accompanying her sister in Tulip Castle for a while and was in no hurry to return. Ulvera and Liszt sat at the other end of the long table. There was no fixed seating arrangement for aristocratic banquets. Apart from the host sitting at the head of the table and the aristocrats of the same rank sitting at the same table, there was not much else to pay attention to. Even at the buffet, there was no need for seats, and one could eat as they pleased. After all, everyone was a lord, and the relationship between colleagues was thin. Most countries, including the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, did not have centralized power, but rather territorial enfeoffment. Regardless of the size of the territory, as long as it was not a relationship between a lord and a follower, there was no involvement with each other. Naturally, there was no need to be too restrained by the gap in status between each other. For example, Marquis Roderick of Golden Island was one of the 6 marquises of the Grand Duchy, but when Liszt met him, he would at most greet him. There was no need to nod or bow, he only needed to swear allegiance to Earl Lee William. As the number of banquets increased, Liszt also became more and more accustomed to this system and rules, gradually weakening the idea of being an official. He would not go soft at the knees just because the other party was a marquis, and even more so because the other party was only a lord knight. He would not feel that he could order around as he pleased. The power of an aristocrat was only within the scope of their territory. In recent years, I have been busy expanding overseas, and rarely celebrate birthdays. Since Lytton was born, the family has not added new tableware. The Earl raised his glass and said with a smile, "Now that Levis and Rolia are married, the Tulip family can finally put new tableware on the table. My hope is to put a second set of tableware on the table as soon as possible. Even every birthday, there will be more tableware than the previous year." The second set of tableware was naturally for Levis and Rolia to make small children as soon as possible. Although monogamy limited the number of children an aristocrat could have, great aristocrats still hoped to have many grandchildren and spread the family's branches. "Lord Father, Rolia and I will work hard to increase the number of children in the family." Levis raised his glass and casually replied, "This is your obligation. Not only do you need to work hard, but you also need to treat it as something more important than winning glory on the battlefield." After giving instructions to Levis and his wife, the Earl turned to Ulvera. "My daughter, you are already 20 years old. You have your own ideas, and I will not interfere. But I hope that you can act as soon as possible, attend more social balls, meet more young aristocrats, and choose a suitable partner." "Of course I understand." After speaking about Ulvera, it was Liszt's turn. The Earl raised his glass, but pondered for a long time before saying, "Liszt, I am satisfied with everything about you. You are the glorious son of the Tulip family. You are calm, smart, brave, and far-sighted. The good qualities of a knight can be found in you. I just have a little more luck and a little more thinking than others." Liszt said modestly. "Luck itself is part of a knight's strength." Cheers. The Earl raised his head and finished the red wine in his glass. Liszt also finished the red wine in his glass. Finally, the Earl's gaze fell on his youngest son, Lytton, and he said a bunch of words. As the younger half-brother of the 3 siblings, Lytton grew up almost under the protection of the Earl and Madame Marie. He was very talented. He was 13 years old this year, but there were vague signs that he would break through to the Earth Knight level. This kind of talent, for the 3 siblings, was a pressure. In particular, Levis felt the greatest pressure. Many of the Tulip family's resources were allocated to Lytton, which made Levis, the eldest son of the first wife and the heir of the family, very dissatisfied. Once, Liszt's predecessor was very jealous of Lytton's talent. But now, Liszt's performance towards Lytton was very indifferent. He even felt estranged from Levis and Ulvera, who were born of the same mother, not to mention Lytton, who had the same father but a different mother. It was difficult for him to treat Lytton as a younger brother. He tried to maintain a state of not interfering with each other. He did not suppress the other, nor did he pay attention to the other. Chapter 450. At the Count's birthday party, what surprised Liszt the most was the restoration of his indifferent relationship with Rona the Golden Wheat. Perhaps this was the aristocratic instinct. After the passion, they would return to their respective lives. Mutual non-interference. Apart from feeling a little emotional, he didn't have too many other thoughts. He took a short break in the afternoon and returned to Flower Town. The affairs of the territory were complicated. Without him as the backbone, it always made people feel uneasy. However, after returning to the territory, he found that there was nothing urgent to deal with. So he went straight to the Black Horse Island's burial ground to extract the dragon magic. He could also ask his knights to help him infuse the fire dragon's bone with magic. However, he could only extract the fire dragon's magic and pour it into the fire dragon jar by himself. After all, only he had the magic Aido-Chi skill. Once he became proficient, the speed of canning the fire dragon magic became faster. He could extract about 4 tons of volcanic glass a day, filling nearly 8 fire dragon cans. The volcanic glass that was extracted from the fire dragon magic was immediately sent to the newly built crystal workshop in Port Town and handed over to the crystal craftsman Brad to carve utensils. Volcanic glass is not as hard as crystal, but it is much harder than glass and has good permeability, suitable for making glassware. Water cups, wine cups, teacups, teapots, wine bottles, glass, test tubes, and small medicine bottles for storing potions, all these utensils are not for sale. The reason is simple. Volcanic glass has a blocking effect on the magic of the fire dragon, so he guessed that this material can also isolate the magic of other dragons. In that case, its value was immeasurable. In his spare time, Liszt also went to the blacksmith shop to find a blacksmith furnace, a blower bag, and charcoal to conduct high-temperature experiments. He remembered that glass could be melted and blown repeatedly. Therefore, he wants to melt the residue produced when Brad carved volcanic glass and mold it into other shapes for the second time. The charcoal burned in the blacksmith furnace, and the servant kept stepping on the blower bag, blowing the charcoal in the furnace. The volcanic glass was placed in the furnace in a tin can and burned. He was not sure what the melting point or softening point of glass was. If it was higher than the melting point of iron, then the experiment would definitely fail. Fortunately, when the tin just turned red, the volcanic glass began to melt. Soon, it melted into a bright, soft substance. Liszt ordered the servant to pour out the volcanic glass and place it on another piece of red-hot iron sheet. Then, a retainer knight inserted an iron pipe into the soft glass and blew hard. The knight's lung capacity was very large. With a light blow, the soft glass began to expand. When it expanded into a ball, Liszt asked him to stop and pulled out the iron pipe. Then, he cleaned the mouth of the bottle slightly, and an ugly glass bottle was fresh out of the oven. Afterwards, a master from the Fire Dragon brick factory came to help complete the annealing process. Annealing was discovered by the workers of the Fire Dragon brick factory. In order to cool the bricks faster, they had used the water splashing method. However, bricks that were splashed with water were easy to break. Thus, under the stimulation of Sir Lige's reward, after a long period of exploration, the workers found a reasonable annealing process that greatly reduced the crushing strength of the fired product. Because of this, 10 workers were rewarded with 10 silver coins each and became the first batch of masters of the Fire Dragon brick factory. From the original simple workers, they were promoted to qualified craftsmen. Because the volcanic glass was a new product, the masters didn't know what temperature was suitable for annealing and could only slowly explore. However, after the volcanic glass cooled down, he took the initiative to report to Liszt, "Sir Lord, there is one thing I don't know if you would like to know." "Speak." Liszt had always encouraged his subjects to discover new things. The master was not old, about 20 years old. His name was Arteist, a serf from the Eagle Kingdom. You know that the Fire Dragon brick factory often looks for new materials to calcine. Once, the serfs of the Thorns caravan brought a kind of yellow-white rock that was a little transparent when facing light. Seeing that Liszt was listening attentively, Arteist said nervously and expectantly, I threw this rock into the kiln to calcine, but it was very strange. It quickly melted into a pool, and when I took it out, it quickly changed its appearance. Just like the volcanic glass you had me anneal, but it was very turbid. Huh? Liszt raised his eyebrows. Like volcanic glass? Yes, it was also a soft lump. It quickly solidified and was a little transparent. I gave it to the masters of the brick factory to examine, but no one could figure out its use. Moreover, it quickly broke. We determined that it was not suitable for calcination, so we gave up on this rock. Artist said. His words greatly touched Liszt. If he didn't guess wrong, the material artist calcined was the long-awaited glass, the original glass made from quartz. The rock brought by the serfs of the Thorns caravan was certainly the raw material of glass, quartz. Liszt had once looked for quartz. He tried to put all the rocks and soil in the Fire Dragon brick factory's kiln to calcine, but he failed to produce glass. He vaguely remembered that the sand on the beach could be used to make glass, but the result was disappointing. The sand on the beach could not produce glass. The sand on the beach seemed to be the sand debris formed after the weathering of ancient coral reefs. Liszt didn't expect that the rock brought from outside might be quartz ore. Liszt immediately ordered Gort to be in charge of this matter. Consultant Gort, what you need to do is to buy a batch of this type of rock that artist mentioned, and then cooperate with the forging glass experiment. Remember to keep it confidential. Sir, can this kind of stone really be calcined into glass, just like the cups you made with volcanic glass? Gort was very puzzled. Whether it is or not, we will have to wait until the experiment is done. The possible discovery of quartz made Liszt overjoyed. He could already imagine how the glass, as a specialty of the Black Horse Island, would amass wealth in the future. In the era of expensive crystals, the small nobles would certainly not be able to resist the temptation of glass products. Of course. Before confirming that the rock was a quartz mine, Liszt did not get carried away. He continued his volcanic glass experiment, to make sure that the volcanic glass that had been calcined still had the effect of blocking the magic of the Fire Dragon. The Fire Dragon needle absorbed a little Fire Dragon magic and injected it into the new Fire Dragon bottle. Injecting it into the new Fire Dragon bottle, he soon found that the Fire Dragon magic was still in the form of magic, quietly flowing in the Fire Dragon bottle, without any leakage. This proved that the effect of volcanic glass to block the dragon magic would not change as it melted and deformed. So, the volcanic glass of the Black Horse Island does have high strategic value, and it is likely to help me subdue the dragon and complete the great cause of riding the dragon. Chapter 451. Setting aside a ton of volcanic glass, Liszt handed it over to the masters of the Fire Dragon brick factory for glass-blowing experiments. This is a technical job that requires constant exploration and polishing to blow suitable glassware. At the same time, the skill of glass blowing also needs to be tempered repeatedly in order to cultivate a truly qualified glass craftsman. Furthermore, glass manufacturing sounded simple, but it was not easy to make flawless transparent glass. It would probably take a long time to explore. At least in the short term, glass could not compete with crystal, even if it was a crystal that used up all its magic power. Liszt himself still stayed on Black Horse Island to extract the magic of the Fire Dragon. The masters of the Fire Dragon brick factory blew a large volcanic glass bottle, translucent in color, vaguely resembling real glass. Of course. Volcanic glass is still different from glass in nature. It is just a glass-like substance. Glass is fragile, but volcanic glass is not easy to break, and its stress range is far greater than that of ordinary glass. Relying on this large volcanic glass bottle, the efficiency of his extraction of the Fire Dragon magic was further accelerated. Fix the volcanic glass bottle, insert a volcanic glass tube into the mouth of the bottle, puncture the volcanic glass or bubble, and immediately put it on the volcanic glass tube. With a little air, the Fire Dragon magic will naturally squeeze into the volcanic glass bottle. When the Fire Dragon magic is full, then extract it and put it into the fire dragon jar. The efficiency has more than doubled. Just as he was happily collecting the fire dragon magic on Black Horse Island, Chris sent a letter from Flower Town, along with a batch of potions. Opening the letter and reading it, his eyes soon lit up. Because in this batch of potions, there was finally a magic potion refined from the auxiliary potion Black Nightshade Auxiliary. This is the 5th magic potion produced in the territory after the Flame Potion, Thorns Potion, Ice and Fire Potion, Snow Flame Mushroom, and Black Potion, Black Tulip. Of course. Now that the Snow Flame Mushroom could not be planted, the Ice and Fire Potion could not be taken for the time being, the Black Tulip was supplied to Levis, and the production of the Black Potion was not continued. Only the Flame Potion and Thorns Potion were needed for List to take daily potions. There were only 5 Black Nightshade Auxiliary. The auxiliary potion Black Nightshade has not yet fully matured. At present, only part of the fully matured auxiliary potion Black Nightshade has been picked and seeds are left to be sown in the Black Nightshade field on Black Horse Island. The rest of the plants were all used to extract the Black Nightshade supplementary herbs. There were exactly 5 Black Nightshade supplementary herbs. He adjusted his mental state and took out a pen and paper. List began to drink the potion. He first tasted the effects of the Black Nightshade. After drinking the magic potion, he could soon feel a surge of magic power rising in his body. However, compared to any other magic potion, the speed at which the Black Nightshade's magic power rose was much slower. It was like a small stream that flowed for a long time. Little by little, his meridians were being nourished, and he felt very comfortable. However, it could not help List break through and expand the total amount of qi in his body. It was soft and powerless, making one drowsy and unable to muster the strength to break through. It's a strange potion. If taken alone, it basically has no effect. It probably means that it has to be used in conjunction with other potions to increase the effect, and it can't be taken alone? The current situation did not exceed List's expectations. The smoke mission had indicated that this was a supplementary magic potion, the Black Nightshade. After carefully experiencing the effects of the Black Nightshade, he quickly took out a flame potion and quickly drank it. In a split second, a raging flame ignited in his abdomen, and the violent qi rushed to his limbs and bones, increasing the total amount of qi in his body. This was what a flame potion should do. However, in the next moment, he suddenly understood why the Black Nightshade was a supplementary magic potion. The flame potion that should have stopped going berserk seemed to have some kind of reaction with the Black Nightshade, causing the flame potion to explode with even more berserk momentum. Wave after wave attacked List's qi meridians. This feeling was similar to the first time he took the flame potion, an uncontrollable riot that caused his body to heat up. He fiercely performed a set of fiery dragon drill to calm down the qi in his body. Then, he had a new understanding of the Black Nightshade supplementary medicine. It was not completely consumed. When the flame potion had completely integrated into his body, the Black Nightshade supplementary medicine was still being released in a continuous stream, repairing the small damage caused to his meridians by the impact of the qi. His body felt like it was soaking in a hot spring. He felt so comfortable that he wanted to moan. After about 20 minutes, the effects of the Black Nightshade finally ended. He closed his eyes and carefully recalled the current state of his body, and came to a conclusion. The Black Nightshade supplementary medicine had increased the effects of the flame potion by more than 3 times, and its side effects had been reduced to a negligible level. Very strong. The value of the Black Nightshade supplementary medicine is even greater than these magic potions. List clenched his fists in excitement. If the Black Nightshade supplementary medicine was worth 1 gold coin, then the flame potion was also worth 1 gold coin. Then, the combination of the Black Nightshade and the flame potion was equivalent to the effect of 3 flame potions. In other words, spending 2 gold coins would get the value of 3 gold coins. Considering that 3 flame potions would cause damage to meridians, and the supplementary medicine could repair meridians, the total value was equivalent to 4 gold coins. The value could be calculated in this way. Simply put, the black nightshade's value was 3 times that of the flame potion, so the price could naturally be set at 3 times. Moreover, the knight who needed the black nightshade's supplementary medicine would flock to it like a flock of ducks. Everyone liked the effects of the black nightshade's supplementary medicine combined with the flame potion. It could save a lot of time. Using the black nightshade supplementary medicine and the flame potion once was equivalent to using the flame potion 4 times. Of course, I won't sell the black nightshade supplementary medicine for now. I have to serve myself. Liszt smiled brightly. It was a wise decision to buy Viscount Eunice's black nightshade worm. Who would have thought that the black nightshade supplementary medicine would be so powerful? Soon after, he continued to test the effects of the black nightshade supplementary medicine and the thorn potion. The conclusion he obtained was similar. It could also increase the effects by 3 times and continue to repair meridians. With my current physical condition, I can probably withstand the impact of the black nightshade supplementary medicine and the flame potion once, and the impact of the black nightshade supplementary medicine and the thorn potion twice. Previously, I could only drink 1 flame potion and 1 thorn potion a day. The efficiency is 4.5 times that of the previous potion. Now, taking the potion for a day was equivalent to taking the potion for 4.5 days in the past. When I find the best way to take the potion, I'm afraid that this efficiency will increase to 5 or even 6 days in the past. It's really like flying. He continued to take the potion. He had a feeling that he might be able to become a Sky Knight this year. Originally, he had set the goal for himself to become a Sky Knight before the age of 20. He was 17 this year, less than 3 years away from his 20th birthday. With the potion's efficiency increased by 5 or 6 times, the time would naturally be shortened to within a year, or even within half a year. He would become a Sky Knight before the age of 18. Phew! The black nightshade supplementary medicine has to cover more than 200 mu, and I have to continue to purchase black nightshade worms from the outside world. Not only did the elite Earth Knight need to take potions, but the Sky Knight also needed to take potions. Every day that he could train was another day that he could not do without potions. Chapter 452. September 21st. 9 days have passed since Levis's wedding. After extracting all the fire dragon magic on Black Horse Island, Liszt returned to Flower Town by boat, ready to live a leisurely life in Flower Town. It was more to prepare for the upcoming expansion order. Shortly after the Count's birthday, he went to the palace to attend a meeting of the Grand Duke's followers to formally discuss this year's expansion order. The pace of war was approaching. Liszt, who had decided to go to the battlefield for the 2nd time, was not nervous, only excited. Excited for the upcoming military exploits, excited for setting foot in a new country, and excited for the plundering of population and resources. It was hard to imagine that the once peace-loving self would become a part of the desire for war. It was probably because he was afraid of poverty. Shortly after returning to Flower Town, a knight of Tulip Castle galloped over and delivered a package. The package was sent from Red Crab Island and contained several piano scores. Meopel gave Liszt the piano scores he had treasured for many years, as well as his notes on playing the piano. When he got the piano score, the smoke mission also changed immediately. The mission has changed. As expected, after receiving the reward in advance, the smoke mission automatically changed. The new Serpentine's content quickly condensed. Mission: Brick Factory's craftsman artist revealed a clue about the quartz mine, allowing you to see the light of making glass. Please figure out how to make glass from the quartz mine and make an ordinary glass product. Reward: Sinkhole Collapse. Sinkhole Collapse? What reward is this? Liszt looked at the Smoke Serpentine's reward content and was puzzled. It seemed that a corner of the territory was about to collapse, revealing a sinkhole. Speaking of sinkholes, There were many sinkholes on Earth, and they often seemed very mysterious. Liszt had seen a documentary about the formation of sinkholes, which was generally related to underground rivers. In karst areas, underground rivers constantly eroded the surface to form karst caves, and after the roof collapsed many times, sinkholes were formed. Flower Town seems to have nothing to do with karst landforms, and Black Horse Island has nothing to do with karst landforms. Liszt's geographical knowledge was not good. He only knew that karst landforms were also called karst landforms, which were linked to karst caves, underground rivers, stalactites, and sinkholes. However, these landforms are not reflected in Coral Island and Black Horse Island. Therefore, he couldn't figure out how this sinkhole would appear in his territory, so he could only wait. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait too long. The Bramblethorn caravan had already brought back a large number of yellow-white stones from the outside. These stones came from Viscount Jonas's territory, Snake Spear City. There was a short hill around Snake Spear City, which was made of such stones. Whether it was a quartz mine or not, he would know once he tested it. Liszt happened to be idle, so he went to Black Horse Island again and observed the craftsmen of the brick factory burning these stones in the Fire Dragon brick factory. In the vision of the magic eyes, the small magical fire dragon was constantly scouring the stone, and soon the impurities in the stone were burned away. Then, the rest of it began to soften and melt, finally forming a pool of sunlight-like liquid. It was not accurate to call it a liquid. It could only be regarded as a soft semi-liquid, like a piece of plasticine. When the temperature is not high, this kind of stone will only soften, then melt, and finally become a real liquid. Arteist explained, however, liquid is not suitable for blowing glass products, so we all start blowing when it becomes soft. They had already used volcanic glass and worked hard on the glass blowing process. Seeing that the stone was melted into a ball of fire, they immediately picked out the semi-liquid, inserted it into the iron pipe, and began to blow. They even used special heat-resistant leather gloves to knead the fire-filled glass solution. In a world full of magic, many materials have special properties. The gloves that Liszt issued to the craftsmen were made of the skin of a beast in World of Warcraft, which could withstand hundreds of degrees of heat. It was originally used to prevent burns when burning bricks, but now it was used to make glass. As the craftsman kneaded and kneaded, the ball of fire, which was originally blown like a ball, gradually turned into a cylindrical jar. Using the leather pouch to continuously blow air to cool down the temperature, a glass jar with some colorful patterns was soon born. It wasn't pure enough, but it was very clear. Sure enough, this ore is a quartz mine, which can be made into glass. The quality is not very high, and the process and raw materials still need to be improved. The thickness of the glass jar was uneven, the shape was asymmetrical, the color was very messy, and even its hardness could not be guaranteed. Liszt only played with it for a while, but he accidentally broke the glass jar, probably because of the uneven distribution of stress during cooling. In any case, the glass was born in his hands, and its exquisite and clear beauty was bound to set off a trend in this world, bringing a steady stream of wealth to the territory. But before selling glass products, the process had to be improved, and the workers had to be trained in large quantities. The process of making a finished glass was very complicated, and relying on the craftsmen of the Fire Dragon brick factory was seriously insufficient. Just as he was about to blow a decent glass himself, a retainer knight hurriedly came to report, "Sir, there was an accident in the burial land." When the serfs were piling up volcanic glass ore, the ground in the middle of the 5 big bones suddenly collapsed, revealing a huge hole. 4 serfs have fallen into the hole. Hole? Liszt had to give up the idea of blowing the glass himself and went to the burial land. He already understood that this was the reward of the smoke mission, sinkhole collapse. On the way, he summoned the smoke mission completed. Reward, sinkhole collapse. Then, a new mission was issued. Mission, sinkhole collapse exposed the roots of the 5 recovered dragon bones. It seems that something is brewing. As a member of the Magic Goat family, Virginia Truth may hold the clues you need. Reward: a fire seed made of magic. Sinkhole collapse exposed the roots of the 5 dragon bones. It seems that this is another part of the chain mission related to the fire dragon. Virginia Truth. I will ask her later. But what was the reward? A fire seed made of mana? What does it mean, or something? While thinking, he had arrived at the burial land. At this time, many people surrounded the 5 fire dragon bones, pointing at them. Seeing the arrival of List, the official in charge of the work at the scene immediately dispersed the serfs and greeted List. What's going on? What's under the hole? Have the serfs been rescued? List asked as he walked. Sir, 4 serfs fell down, 3 of them died, and only Sean is still alive. But his leg is broken, and he is lying in a pile of stones under the hole. We are looking for ropes to rescue him. As for what is down there, it is not clear. The hole is very dark. Soon. Walking to the edge of the sinkhole collapse, List looked carefully. The hole was not big, at most 100 square meters circular. Chapter 453. While waiting for the rope, List carefully asked the serf Sean about the situation at the bottom of the sinkhole. The serf Sean had adapted to the dark environment. He only said that the bottom of the sinkhole was very spacious, there was no underground river, and there seemed to be thick stone pillars around. There were no beasts or poisonous gas. According to List's visual estimation, the bottom of the sinkhole was about 30 meters deep. Because the sun could not shine directly, the light was very dim. It didn't take long for someone to bring the rope and put it together piece by piece. Finally, it could be lowered to the bottom of the sinkhole. List first sent 2 retainer knight down with crystal lamps. When the serf Sean was brought up, the 2 retainer knight had already reported the situation at the bottom of the sinkhole. My lord, the sinkhole is very strange. There are many passages leading to all directions. At the bottom of this hole, it seems that the lower half of the 5 big bones above are stuck in the hole. Eliminate the danger. Unable to hear the description of the retainer knight, List went down to explore himself. Falling to the bottom of the sinkhole, using the light of the crystal lamps, he finally saw the sinkhole, a typical lava cavern and lava tunnel structure. At the bottom of the sinkhole was a huge cavern, surrounded by countless tunnels, extending deep underground. At the top of the cavern, 5 fire dragon bones were stuck down. These 5 fire dragon bones were distributed on the ground in an irregular shape of a sword blade. Originally, List thought that the dragon bones were straight, but the dragon bones stuck in the cavern outlined the complete shape of the dragon bones, a curved rib structure. These 5 dragon bones must be the ribs of the fire dragon. It seems that the tips of the ribs all point to a central point, and the distance between them is about the same, about 10 meters. He moved in the cavern and walked to the middle of the 5 dragon bones. Magic Eyes was activated, but no signs of magic were observed. Where did the fire dragon magic I poured before go? Is it stored in the dragon bones? List touched the dragon bones. The dragon bones in the cavern seemed to be a little fresher than the dragon bones on the surface, more like bones than stone. Without a clue, he began to explore the lava tunnels around the cavern. However, these lava tunnels were simply impassable. They were getting narrower and narrower until they closed. It feels like the original volcano of Black Horse Island. When magma erupted, this crypt was specially made. He returned to the center of the crypt and let the 2 retainer knight leave. You 2 go back to the surface and disperse the surrounding onlookers. Seal off the burial ground. I want to continue researching for a while. Yes, my lord. The squire knight left. List quickly took out the soul storage jar and poured out Virginia Truth's soul form. Ah, I slept for a long time. Hello, Viscount List, nice to meet you again. Virginia stretched herself and greeted him. She then realized that she was not in the study. Hey, where is this? It looks like an underground cave. There are 5 more pillars? He narrowed his eyes. List thought to himself. According to the instructions of the smoke mission, Virginia seemed to have a clue about dragons. He didn't know if he should tell her the secret of the fire dragon's bones. After a while, he decided to reveal it. After all, everything about Virginia was under his control. Virginia, the 5 pillars you see aren't ordinary stone pillars. They're the remains of a fire dragon. Ah! Virginia exclaimed, the remaining bones of the fire dragon? Yes, this is the secret I discovered. I don't know how many years ago, a fire dragon fell here. Its corpse has decayed, leaving only these 5 bones. It seems to contain a special power. I don't know what you think about it. I know too little information. Viscount List, can you help me carefully observe these dragon bones? What do you want to observe? Virginia slowly wrapped around one of the dragon bones in the form of smoke, trying to touch it, but she couldn't. I want to know if these dragon bones still have the magic of the fire dragon. My family has several generations of magicians who like to study dragons and dragon beasts. They believe that dragons will not decay. But this fire dragon has clearly decayed. There are only 5 bones left, probably 5 ribs. I don't know. Maybe, the dragon has already laid the secret of reincarnation? Virginia shook her head and said, some people think that the Valley of Dragons is the place where dragons die and originate, and that dragons complete a reincarnation in the Valley of Dragons. But I don't know what a dragon that died outside the Valley of Dragons looks like. Reincarnation, List wanted to reject this idea, but he was looking forward to it. After the fire dragon died, it reincarnated into a small fire dragon. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So, you think these 5 dragon bones are the tools that the fire dragon is preparing for reincarnation? I don't know, it's just a guess. Wait a minute. List turned around and walked to the entrance of the crypt. He shouted, Philip, have you expelled all the miscellaneous people from the burial ground? They have all been expelled, my lord. You don't need to be surprised what happens next. Yes, my lord. After instructing his retainer knight, he took out a bone hammer and began to beat the dragon bones. Along with the rhythm of the beating, in the vision of the eye of magic, the surface of the dragon bones quickly flashed scarlet magic lines. In the normal vision, the dragon bones did not change much, but as long as one was a knight or a mage, they would probably be able to feel the magic rippling on them. Although Virginia was in a soul state, she could still feel the existence of magic. She looked at the dragon bones in surprise and carefully looked at the position of the 5 dragon bones. Her eyes were faintly moved. What do you think, Virginia? Did you notice anything? List asked immediately. He had been observing her expression the whole time. Viscount List, I don't know if my guess is correct, but I feel that these 5 dragon bones seem to have arranged a magic array. Magic array? A mage needs a very high talent to practice. Our magic goat family can't give birth to talented people in every generation. But the reason why we can pass on magic is more because we rely on a magic array to help mediocre apprentices learn magic. I relied on magic array to break through and become a mage. Virginia was just an ordinary mage when she was alive. It was understandable that her talent was average. List asked, so what kind of magic array are these 5 dragon bones arranged? It is the magic array I mentioned. The principle is somewhat similar, but I don't know the specific situation. I can no longer observe the rune arrangement inside the magic array. I speculate that the exposed parts of the dragon bones on the surface can absorb free magic, and then through the dragon bones in the crypt, they can gather together. Can it still be reactivated? According to the information you provided, the dragon bones have existed for at least thousands of years. I am afraid that the possibility of reactivation has long been lost. But the magic that rose from the surface of the dragon bones just now proves that it still has a trace of vitality. Maybe one day, it can really gather enough magic to condense a fire dragon. Could dragons reincarnate? It was hard to say. Were dragons made of magic? It was hard to say. Could the dragon bone magic array still be used? There was no guarantee. Chapter 454. Most of the time, Liszt was an ordinary person who liked to think about the future, but had no long-term plans. It was a bit like the monkey in the primary school Chinese textbook, who picked up sesame and threw away the watermelon. Of course. He would not do something like throwing away watermelons, but he kept picking up things along the way, wanting to pick up everything. There were a lot of projects carried out in the territory, almost more than the Count's Coral Island. However, the problem was that each industry had not been seriously developed. All of them had their heads raised, and then they were placed to the side, maintaining a state of not withering. Of course, it was because he was poor and did not have the manpower to develop them, but also because he did not have a long-term plan and did not know how to focus on the distribution of industries. In addition, he liked to find trouble, but did not have the patience to do the best, leading to the current situation. He obviously had good cards in his hand, but he could not put together a bomb. However, Liszt also had advantages in his character. He was adaptable and could quickly integrate into the new environment. He was diligent, mainly in cultivating qi and potions. He insisted on his own opinion and did not turn back until he hit the wall. He bravely moved forward, and as long as he made up his mind, he would do it immediately. For example, right now, he fully displayed his bravery and insistence on his own opinion. He released a large amount of fire dragon magic that had just been extracted and watched as it was constantly devoured by the fire dragon bones. Even if his heart was bleeding, his movement still did not stop. Let's do it, I don't believe that I can't smash out a small fire dragon. Cans of fire dragon magic poured out, and the fire dragon bones, like a bottomless pit, constantly devoured the fire dragon magic. On the surface, the retainer knight broke the bubbles of the newly mined volcanic glass one by one and released the fire dragon magic, which the 5 dragon bones greedily absorbed. It took nearly a week to collect. The release took only 2 hours. The fire dragon magic was exhausted. The so-called dragon bone magic array still did not condense the imagined fire seed composed of magic. This was the content of the smoke mission reward. Liszt believed that it had a great connection with the small fire dragon and was likely to be the seed that gave birth to the small fire dragon. The role of the dragon bone magic array was probably to condense such a fire seed. The smoke mission has not been completed, which means that the fire dragon magic is not enough. Liszt took out the bone hammer and hit the fire dragon bones hard. With every strike, the scarlet magic threads would appear densely. The fire dragon's bones looked as if they were on fire, forming 5 huge flaming pillars. It was a magnificent sight. However, the flames did not rise in the end, and the magic threads were still magic threads. But it's still not enough. Continue mining volcanic glass. While ordering his subordinates to continue mining volcanic glass, Liszt called Virginia Truth and explained his actions in detail. He almost revealed all the magic of the fire dragon in order to get useful clues. After all, according to the smoke mission, Virginia had the clues. Viscount Lister, when I was alive, I was just an ordinary magician. My family was engaged in the production of dragon bones. Basically, I worked according to the instructions of the great magician. Virginia walked around the dragon bone and thought about it for a while, but she still couldn't come up with anything. Liszt was unwilling to give up. Think about it again. She sighed. I don't want to talk about it, but if my sister, Curtis Truth, was still around, she would definitely know about these 5 dragon bones. She was most passionate about studying dragons. Curtis? Liszt's mind suddenly flashed with inspiration. Curtis is dead, but she still has a relic. Yes, she left a book, to His Royal Highness Annette, Curtis Truth. He took back Virginia. He quickly took out the magic pen notebook and kept flipping through it, trying to find useful information. However, the entire magic notebook recorded a large number of experiments on making liches and experiments on ghost ships, but there was no mention of information related to dragons. He closed the notebook. List frowned. There is no information related to dragons in the book, and Virginia has no more clues. Is there no other way but to continuously increase the magic of the fire dragon? I always feel that the magic in the fire dragon's bones is enough, but it is missing something. What is missing? When his eyes swept across the cover of the magic notebook, he suddenly had an epiphany. I know, what is missing is the soul. The magic circle can gather the magic of the fire dragon and use it as fuel to condense the magic fire seed, and even breed the small fire dragon. But it is missing the soul. Material, spirit, and magic, these are the three basic elements that make up the world in the mage's cognition. Now the dragon bone magic circle has magic and the dragon bone as a material foundation, but it lacks the spiritual support. Legend has it that the dragon's soul lives in the dragon's teeth, but Liszt could not find the dragon's teeth. But he remembered. In his gem space, there are several soul-related items, the sapphire dragon bow, the sheephead flag, and the soul-sinking wood. They are all between reality and illusion. Can these things condense a soul through the dragon bone magic circle? He decided to give it a try and took out a piece of soul-sinking wood. The soul-sinking wood was intact in the gem space. As soon as it was taken out, it immediately began to tremble and collapse, as if it had never existed. However, after Liszt cast magic eyes, he found a faint magic flowing into the dragon bone along with the air. It really works. The dragon bone magic circle can absorb this material. The soul-sinking wood is a material made by Curtis Truth after he sacrificed the souls of a ship's crew. It is closely related to the soul. Next, he kept taking out the soul-sinking wood, and all the materials were swallowed up by the dragon bone. When he hammered the dragon bone again, he clearly felt that when the magic threads appeared, there seemed to be a little more agile, but it was still not enough. He could not condense a fire seed composed of magic. At this time, only the sheephead flag and the sapphire dragon bow were left. He took out the sheephead flag first, and it quickly collapsed and was absorbed. Still not enough, but it felt like it had reached the critical point. Finally, the sapphire dragon bow was taken out, and after it collapsed, it was absorbed by the dragon bone. Liszt took a deep breath, lifted the bone hammer, and hammered it hard on the dragon bone. One hammer after another. With each hammering, the magic was more agile, no longer fleeting, but stayed on the surface of the dragon bone, forming complex fiery red lines. This change made Liszt overjoyed, and he continued to hammer, and the fiery red lines continued to enrich on the surface of the dragon bone. Finally, the 24th hammer hammered down. There was a loud explosion. The dragon bone suddenly burst into a raging fire, and the flames at the tips of the 5 dragon bones quickly gathered together, forming a bright small fireball. Then all the flames on the dragon bone moved toward the small fireball. The temperature in the crypt under the collapsed sinkhole suddenly rose. Liszt had to dodge to the side. Then he saw that the originally thick dragon bone seemed to shrink, or as if it had all turned into flames, and finally gathered in the small fireball. The flames came quickly. And quickly went away. In less than half a minute, the raging fire was extinguished. The 5 dragon bones had disappeared, leaving only 5 faintly visible channels leading to the ground. In the center of the original dragon bone tip, a small fire seed, floating in the air, emitting a flame about the size of a candle. Is this a fire seed composed of magic? Liszt approached cautiously. He couldn't feel the temperature, and the temperature of the previous fire also dropped rapidly, and the crypt soon returned to normal temperature. He didn't have the mind to pay attention to where the dragon bones went, and he just kept circling around the little magic fire seed to observe. In any way, it looked like an ordinary flame. The inside was as bright as the sun, and the outside was as red as blood. Is it breeding a little fire dragon? List was curious. He knew that this magic fire seed was extraordinary, but he couldn't see it with the naked eye. Using magic eyes, it looked the same shape, a simple candle-like flame. He cautiously extended the handle of the bone hammer and let the fire seed burn the handle of the hammer. But after the flame burned, the handle of the bone hammer was intact, as if the flame had no power at all. List tried other concentrated materials, which also failed to cause damage, and even thick bast paper could not be burned. He also touched the flame with volcanic glass and found that it would not be broken. It was completely different from the previous fire dragon magic. No temperature, can't burn, what kind of existence is it? After repeated experiments to determine that it was almost harmless, List couldn't help but want to touch it himself. He really couldn't control his curiosity. His fingers stretched out carefully, and when his fingertips just touched the flame, he only felt a blur in front of him, and the magic fire seed had already drilled into his fingers. List was so scared that he hurriedly shook his hand and wanted to throw the fire seed out. But the fire seed ran at a high speed along the chi meridians in his body, and in the blink of an eye, he felt it appear in his heart. Then there was a piercing pain, and he felt his heart was burning. His head buzzed, and he lost consciousness. Chapter 455. The flames were burning fiercely. List woke up from his coma and found himself in an underground lava cave. There was a rock floating in the magma under his feet. The scorching temperature made him sweat profusely. The bubbling magma, coupled with the endless flames around him, made him feel as if he had fallen into the abyss of hell. He wanted to circulate the chi in his body to resist the scorching atmosphere in the air, but he felt that he could not muster any strength. He could not even pull out the sky cutter sword on his back. What's going on? List was shocked. His mind was a little buzzing and blank. At this moment, the flames in front of him suddenly parted. Then, a huge head stretched out of the flames. It was a head the size of a house. Its reddish-brown skin was stained with flames. It was triangular in shape and had 5 curved horns. The scales were clearly visible. There were also 2 eyes flashing with golden flames on the left and right, and a slightly opened bloody mouth. Sharp teeth were arranged in order. The tongue could not be seen, but flames could be seen flickering in and out of it. The head stopped less than 10 meters in front of List. The golden flames in its eyes looked at List in a humane manner. Everything below the neck was in flames and could not be seen clearly. But List still recognized at a glance that it was a dragon's head, the head of a fire dragon. At first glance, it was ugly and ferocious. Upon closer inspection, every line was extremely rhythmic, full of a strange sense of power and beauty. This was an image that no creature could have. It could only appear on a dragon. Trembling was not enough to describe List's current mood. Facing the fire dragon's head, he only wanted to turn around and escape. He had no ambition to ride a dragon in the past. But at the critical moment, his legs went soft and he could not move. It was as if he had been cast with the body-fixing spell, or as if his legs were not his own. He was very frightened. Other than the Dragon Knight and the magic shooter, perhaps no one could overcome their fear when facing a dragon. However, in addition to fear, his mind was more blank, and his thinking was not very flexible. He did not feel the pressure of the dragon's might, but his body was no different from those animals that were frightened by the dragon's might. The dragon's head continued to stare at him. He stood on the rock, not daring to move. The surrounding flames were still burning, and the magma was still bubbling. But very soon, List's mind gradually became clear. He gradually recalled that he seemed to have woken up from a coma. However, this was not the place where he had fainted. Instead, he had fainted in a collapsed sinkhole. Yes. I activated the Dragon Bone magic array and condensed a fire seed made of mana. Then that fire seed burrowed into my body and ran to the position of my heart. It seems to have burned my heart. Something's wrong. Am I dead or alive? His thoughts were still a little chaotic. However, as he took a few deep breaths and carefully combed through his thoughts, he finally sorted out the current situation. Either I'm dead, and everything is a scene of hell after death, or the magic fire seed has caused magma to erupt and fill up the collapsed sinkhole, or, all of this is just an illusion in my coma, and I'm being affected by the magic fire seed. After a person died. Without any accidents, there would probably be nothing left. Only in a few cases would one become a soul. There was no such thing as hell in this world. The soul either existed like Virginia or went to the land of exile. Therefore, the current scene was not in line with the scene after death. As for the magic fire seed causing magma to erupt, and even the emergence of a fire dragon, it was even more unreasonable. Black Horse Island was indeed a volcanic island, but the volcano had been dead for many years, and the fire dragon had long been left with only a few wreckage. There was no reason for such a huge fire dragon to be born again. So the current scene is just a dream in my coma? Thinking of this, Liszt suddenly felt the fear and pressure that bound him suddenly dissipate. He regained control of his body. His back was straight. He pulled out the sky cutter sword and looked coldly at the fire dragon's head that was still staring at him. His voice was cold, "You are the projection of the magic fire seed. It's a very strange state. My body is still in a coma, but my mind is in such a real environment. Even this illusory body is so real." The fire dragon's head shook slightly, and its golden flame-like eyes flashed with a dangerous light. Its mouth gradually opened, and there was a flame as hot as the sun brewing inside. It seemed that it would spit out the dragon's breath at any time and burn Liszt into slag. But Liszt was not afraid. He confirmed his guess from another point of view. This fire dragon had no dragon's might at all, it was just an empty shell. He had personally felt the invisible dragon's might. The scalp-tingling, breathless dragon's might left a deep impression. The fire dragon in front of him did not have this. Roar. The fire dragon did not spit out its dragon's breath. Instead, it let out a harsh dragon's roar. It was very sharp, very strange, and it was impossible to describe what this roar sounded like. Liszt did not cover his ears. He just lifted the sky cutter sword to deal with the possible crisis. Even though he guessed that this was a dream affected by the magic fire seed, he still did not relax. If he did not leave this place, it meant that there would be danger at any time. Fortunately, the danger did not happen. After the roar, the eyes of the fire dragon's head once again fluctuated with a trace of inexplicable meaning. Then, it slowly shrank back into the flames and disappeared without a trace. Then, the surrounding flames began to extinguish, and the surrounding magma began to darken, and everything suddenly fell into darkness. The high temperature disappeared. Liszt also felt a burst of exhaustion, closed his eyes, and dozed off. Hunger. Extreme hunger. There was an uncontrollable desire to eat himself to relieve the hunger. Suddenly opening his eyes, Liszt woke up to the expulsion of hunger. His mind was groggy, and only the idea of hunger was the strongest. He resisted the growling protest of his stomach and looked around. A crystal lamp emitted light, barely illuminating the surroundings. It was a collapsed sinkhole in the crypt. It was just that the 5 dragon bones that had originally pierced in had disappeared, leaving 5 channels leading to the surface, with a slight light coming in. Huh! He breathed a long sigh of relief. It was really just a dream affected by the magic fire seed. I'm really hungry, no, I have to eat something. He couldn't wait to take out the World of Warcraft meat and dragon milk from the gem space, eating and drinking. After eating about 5 pounds of World of Warcraft meat and 3 large cups of dragon milk, he felt the hunger slightly go away, and his mind was completely awake. What's wrong with me? I'm afraid the amount of food I ate in one breath is equivalent to the amount of my daily meals. He rubbed his bulging stomach, very surprised. His appetite was huge, and one meal was equivalent to 2 or 3 meals for others. After all, the knight's chi production needs to be provided by the food he eats. Even if his cultivation of the chi secret skill, aura decay, can effectively control the speed of chi loss, he still has a huge appetite. However, he pays great attention to healthy and reasonable diet and rarely overeat. He tries to increase the number of meals instead of eating as much as possible. Chapter 456. He thought of the magic kindling. There was a sudden heat in his chest, and he could clearly feel that there was something more in his heart. He ran his body with all his strength, trying to guide this thing out of his heart, but several attempts ended in failure. The magic kindling stayed in his heart and was not ready to leave. List had a serious expression on his face. His body had been invaded by the mana kindling. Although he had regained consciousness, it did not make him feel at ease. What the hell did I throw out? Can this mana kindling give birth to a little fire dragon? He thought to himself. Does it have a negative effect in my heart? Unable to drive it away, List could only try to comfort himself. He quickly called out the smoke mission. Completed the mission, reward is a magic kindling. The mission has been completed. The magic kindling was indeed the reward of the smoke mission, but the reward method was somewhat unexpected. If it is the reward of the smoke mission, the magic kindling should not cause damage to my body, right? List thought to himself. So far, the rewards of the smoke mission have been benefits, and there has been no harm. It can be seen that the magic kindling is also a benefit, but how to use its benefits, he has not yet understood. In a flash, the smoke changed into a new serpentine. Mission: the magic kindling has been obtained. The most valuable thing in Black Horse Island has been obtained by you. The collapsed sinkhole has become a huge hidden danger in the territory. It can collapse at any time and threaten the safety of the people. Please solve the hidden danger of the collapsed sinkhole. Reward: the restlessness of the rubber worm. Oh! Seeing the new mission, List's eyes lit up. The magic kindling is the most valuable thing in Black Horse Island, so it may really involve the fire dragon. As Virginia said, it is the key to the fire dragon reincarnation. That is to say, there may be a future fire dragon living in my body. He was very excited when he thought about it. But after the excitement calmed down, he could not help but feel a headache. It takes so much to condense a magical kindling. Almost half of the volcanic glass ore on Black Horse Island was mined, and only then was it enough to make up the dragon's magic. There is also a special soul item taken from the ghost ship. If he wants to breed a fire dragon, there was probably going to be a huge expenditure waiting for him in the future. Strictly speaking, the mana spark should only be one part of the fire dragon chain quest. Let me do the math. Standing in the cave, List was not in a hurry to go up. He began to count the number of smoke missions he had completed. Including the completed and altered missions, there were a total of 83 missions in the past 1.5 years. Among them, the tasks related to the fire dragon started from the 36th task, migration of 100 serfs to settle on Black Horse Island, and the reward was 5 rotten dragon bones. Next was the 38th mission, which was to raise more than 1,000 chickens in the flower town. The reward was a fire attribute core mineral vein, which was volcanic glass. Then, he came to the 71st quest, waiting for the Battle of Iron Hoof Island to end. The reward was the recovery of the decaying dragon bone. Then there was the 77th mission, mining 10 tons of volcanic glass. The reward was the rubber worm's agitation. Mission number 78, infuse the fire dragon's magic power into the dragon bone. Reward, powder conch that produces powder pearls. The 82nd mission was to create glass products. The reward was to collapse the sinkhole. Mission number 83, obtain Virginia's clues. Reward, magic tinder. Of these 7 missions, some of them were related to the fire dragon, and some of them were related to the fire dragon. Basically, they could be regarded as part of the fire dragon chain mission. If you look into it seriously, there are probably missions that can be related to the fire dragon, such as several missions related to Virginia. Mission number 27, find out the reason for the coldness of the damaged sunken ship. The reward was to fix the dragon bone, which hid the 36D ghost. Mission number 57, collect the black pearls of the ring-shaped reef. The reward was to restore the memory of the 36D ghost and become Virginia Truth. Mission number 65, set foot on Iron Hoof Island. The reward was to wake up Virginia. With so many missions, it was obvious that they did not exist alone. Many missions intersected with other chain missions, forming a complicated thread of fate. If List did not master the smoke mission and get the golden finger of fate, he would have missed many of the rewards. It was the influence of the thread of fate that made a seemingly unrelated reward gradually accumulate and eventually lead to a greater reward. A fire dragon. I must be in the middle of the fire dragon chain mission, but there are many missions and I can't complete them all in one go. Now, the reward of the 84th smoke mission is changed to the restlessness of the rubber worm. In other words, this magic tinder will probably stay in my body for a while. Calm thinking. Let him calm down his restless emotions. As long as the magic tinder did not cause any harm, he would let it live in his heart. In the future, he would slowly figure out how to connect with the magic tinder, or wait for the release of the new fire dragon chain mission to solve the problem of the magic tinder. He pulled the rope that hung down and shouted to the top of the collapsed sinkhole, "Philip, Xavier. My lord, we are here." The voice of the retainer knight came from the cave entrance. They had been guarding the burial ground. "Pull me up." After returning to the ground and asking, he found out that he did not stay in the crypt for too long. In other words, he was only unconscious for about a quarter of an hour. A quarter of an hour, he was so hungry that his head was dizzy and he even wanted to eat himself. Obviously, it was caused by the magic tinder. Fortunately, it was just hunger, there were no other changes in his body, and the operation of his battle chi was normal. "My lord, how is the situation in the burial ground?" Marcus, who came from the training ground, asked. The 5 iconic bones of the burial ground disappeared, and anyone would be puzzled. Probably the 5 bones have decayed, triggering the collapse of the ground. There is nothing in the sinkhole. List said casually, what needs to be done now is to fill up the collapsed sinkhole to prevent the ground from collapsing again and endangering the safety of the people in the territory. There have been 3 deaths and 1 injury, the loss is great. Every serf in the territory was an important productive force. In addition to the force majeure of old age and death of illness, List hoped to minimize the casualties in other aspects. We can transport the rocks produced by the blizzard beasts and fill this sinkhole. The administrative officer, Blair, suggested. List was here, and so was the training of the blizzard beasts. Every time the training was over, a large number of rocks were released from the rock thorns. List thought about it and said, the terrain of the burial ground is not high. On the contrary, it is very low. It is actually a bit abnormal that there was no water before. You can fill half of it with rocks and sea sand, and find a way to fill the other half with fresh water. Whether it is farming or grazing in the future, you will need fresh water. He guessed that the reason why there was no water in this sinkhole was probably related to the fire dragon bones. All the water was evaporated. Now that the dragon bones have decayed, maybe they can hold water. Chapter 457. The heavy rain came faster than expected. The climate of the island was like this. It may be cloudless in the morning, but it would be stormy in the afternoon. When the bottom layer of the collapsed sinkhole was barely filled with rocks and sand, a sudden heavy rain poured down. The time was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. At the same time, List was in his room in Port Town, eating heartily. The roasted World of Warcraft meat was sprinkled with seasoning. He did not need alcohol to accompany the meal, and he still ate delicious. This was his fourth meal of the day. 1 in the morning, 1 in the morning, 1 at noon, and 1 in the afternoon. And he had to eat in the evening, and get up in the middle of the night to eat again. 7 meals a day, and each meal was more than before. He also had to go to the toilet twice to expel the residue after the food was digested. So, I am now a man and a dragon sharing a mouth to eat? After eating the barbecue, List took out a glass of dragon milk and drank it. There was a complicated look of sorrow between his eyebrows. Despite eating 7 meals a day, he not only did not show any signs of obesity, but on the contrary, he felt a little thinner. The magical fire seed absorbs nutrients, so I have to afford more World of Warcraft meat, dragon milk, and other nutritious foods. I am afraid the amount of food I spend on eating now is comparable to Dosen. Dosen and other Blizzard beasts were intermediate World of Warcraft, and the food consumed every day was huge. List had caught up and showed signs of surpassing them. Judging from the value of food, the value of his consumption was higher because he could not do without dragon milk and World of Warcraft meat. If he did not eat World of Warcraft meat or drink dragon milk for a meal, he would always feel weak. I don't know how long it will take to raise this magical fire seed. In the long run, I will be eaten by it sooner or later. The only good thing is that the magical fire seed does not consume magic power, otherwise, I really can't afford to take potions. He had been eating every day for the past 2 days. However, he did not feel the slightest change in the position of his heart. Other than the occasional warm feeling from the mana spark, there was no other activity. No matter how hard List tried, he could not draw it out, nor could he stimulate it. There was no way to use the magic power of the magic fire seed itself. He guessed that the magic power that made up the magic fire seed was definitely the highly concentrated dragon magic. Otherwise, there was no way to explain where so much fire dragon magic went after being transformed by the dragon bone magic array. Volcanic glass was still being mined in the territory. About a dozen tons of volcanic glass could be mined from the surface. The shallow volcanic glass was very easy to mine, and the soil was very soft. However, it was very difficult to mine volcanic glass in the deeper layers. At this stage, there was a shortage of serfs, so they chose shallow volcanic glass for mining. Based on the area of Black Horse Island, the total reserves of volcanic glass exceed 50 tons. He used about 20 tons of fire dragon magic in the volcanic glass to condense a small magic fire seed. Such a compression ratio can compress gas into liquid. Why is the change in fire dragon magic only condensed into a flame that is not much bigger than a candle flame? It was difficult to guess the transformation of magic power. List didn't know how much resources it took to raise a dragon, but raising a magic fire seed had already accelerated the degree of his financial constraints. I have to speed up the practice of aura decay. Currently, using this chi secret skill can slow down the loss of chi by 1/3 of the body. According to Stephanie Vulture's introduction of the Chi secret skill, at the Elite Earth Knight level, it can slow down the loss of Chi by 3/4. Slowing down the loss of Chi meant improving the utilization of nutrients and reducing food intake. By mastering the aura decay, the 3/4 reduction would allow him to save at least 2 meals. Eating only 5 meals a day would be enough. Moreover, after mastering the aura decay, the consumption of potions would also be reduced. It was undoubtedly a very cost-effective Chi secret skill. I must master it as soon as possible. Just after eating, he entered a state of cultivation and worked hard to run the Qi method of the aura decay. With the pressure given by the magic fire seed, he was extremely focused on his cultivation, concentrating on every detail of the Qi's secret skill. He hoped to master it as soon as possible and save some money on meals. Suddenly, his heart jumped, and he felt the rubber sprite worm connected to his mind, giving him a vague feeling of restlessness. He raised his eyebrows and called out the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, the restlessness of the rubber worm. The mission was completed, indicating that the collapsed sinkhole had been filled in the heavy rain, becoming a lake and 5 holes. With the water to support the pressure on the surface, the rocks around the sinkhole should not collapse easily. But in the future, fences should be set around to prevent falling into the water. It was a sinkhole lake nearly 30 meters deep. He stood up and prepared to take the rubber worm to plant a new cordyceps. Needless to say, he could already sense what the restless rubber worm wanted to do. Just like the previous rubber worm, it wanted to spit out the new cordyceps that it had bred in its body. By the way, pay attention to the new smoke mission. Mission: the new autumn harvest is about to begin. Flower Town and Black Horse Island have opened up many farmlands. However, the food cultivated is still difficult to meet the population consumption of the territory, and there will be more people in the future. Please store enough food for 10,000 people through the winter. Reward: a sprite. Huh. Seeing the reward, List was stunned. Another sprite? The surprise came too suddenly, and he didn't know how to express his feelings for a while. He felt a little stiff. It was probably because of the fire dragon in the past 2 days that his brain was a little jumbled. It took a while for his mind to work again. Is it a wild sprite like Nami, or a domestic sprite worm like Ella? If it was a domestic sprite worm, which one would it be, the corn grass sprite worm, or the rubber worm triplets? It should not be the rubber worm triplets. They should have evolved into 3 sprites. So, his thoughts shifted to the corn grass worm. He did not bring this sprite worm with him. It was still in the castle of Flower Town. List was not sure whether it was quietly accumulating power or not. He was not even sure that the corn grass worm was going to break through into a sprite. However, during this time, apart from the rubber worm triplets, the corn grass worm was the only other sprite worm. List shook his head. He suppressed the meaningless speculation. He turned to think about the content of the mission. Store enough food for 10,000 people to survive the winter. According to tradition, winter is from November to February of the next year. However, in Flower Town, the so-called winter refers to the snowy season from mid-December to mid-February of the next year. Flower Town was the northeasternmost corner of Coral Island, and Black Horse Island was northeast of Flower Town. Starting in mid-December every year, there would be a long season of snow and ice. During this time, serfs would usually stay at home and move as little as possible to reduce calorie consumption and the number of meals. Food for more than 10,000 people for 2 months is not a small amount. Grains alone are certainly not enough. Seafood and meat must be stocked up in large quantities, preferably with a large number of salted meat and pickled vegetables. But the smoke mission requires food for 10,000 people to survive the winter is very interesting. The smoke mission was closely related to his own thoughts. Sometimes List thought that many of the missions were driven by his own imagination. For example, the strange mission to help Meopal and Angela improve their sexual relations. Perhaps List always deliberately thought of Angela Sapphire's debauchery, which was projected through the smoke mission. Recently, he had been worried about how to buy serfs and transport them back to the territory. Therefore, the smoke mission issued the mission of food for 10,000 people to survive the winter. Perhaps I can try it in the future smoke missions and actively guide the smoke mission through constant self-suggestion. It feels a bit unreliable. At most, it will affect the content of the mission, but it does not seem to affect the reward of the mission. But it is not a bad thing to try. He had always relied on the reward of the smoke mission to achieve the rapid development of the territory and himself. But deep in his heart, he also had a strong desire for control. He wanted to firmly grasp the smoke mission in his hands, rather than passively trigger the mission. Moreover, it may be related to a sacred dragon. Smoke dragon. Therefore, he never stopped thinking about the smoke mission. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.